The news flow, as we all know, has been just so extraordinary in international relations. And that is Monday, sort of like first full week. We're back to it and all. It's like the first real business day of the year. Shanali Bassick joins us now, our chief financial correspondent. I don't want to talk anything else, Shanali, except jobs on Wall Street, and particularly New York Wall Street. What's the mood out there? Is it 5 jobs here, 10 jobs here? Is it big restructurings? Or is everybody sort of happy with where they are?
There's no really big restructuring right now. There's a lot of jobs being lost at Morgan Stanley, on some trading desks at Citigroup. But remember, Citigroup...
those are not restructurings?
Well, listen, even though Citigroup is cutting hundreds of jobs in trading, they're adding another 2,500 programmers. And so the job type is changing, and they're investing in technology, but they're cutting elsewhere.
What I think is interesting is whether we're going to see a shift from the job cuts going from investment banks to the buy side, because we saw AQR, for example, announcing a round of head cuts yesterday, and I'm wondering whether there is sort of a shift. Banks have already taken the pain, but in a low-rate, low-income environment, the investment managers haven't, and they're the ones where the job losses are going to be bigger.
I am going to cannibalize myself and say you're kidding on the number one thing I'm looking at this year, which is the war between the buy side and the sell side, because some would argue that it's never been greater. Wall Street's biggest enemy is itself. So Citadel is actually hiring from Goldman, Citadel Securities, one of the biggest market makers. So yes, people are moving away from the banks back into the buy side again. There are some hedge fund jobs popping up despite all the carnage. Private equity is turning into investment banks, and so the buy side is picking up a lot of that capacity.
What's the sell side doing?
The sell side is watching it happen right now. And so I think this year will be really interesting to see. One of the models people are watching are direct listings. Why does that matter? It takes a lot of power from the banks and one of their most lucrative businesses.
A direct listing is where you don't do an IPO where Pharaoh goes to the road show at the hotel and eats rubber chicken.
Exactly, no more rubber chicken.
This is the second.
How else do you get your 8,000 shares?
That sounds like your experience and not mine.
Can you imagine?
Rubber chicken there.
Oh, you literally in any given city, you know each hotel how rubbery the rubber
honestly,
chicken is.
You must have been traumatized, because this is about the 5th time I've heard you talk about the rubbery chicken.
Everyone on the sell side is traumatized at a high level.
Tom should write a book about hotel bars.
I'm talking about the restaurant, IPO roadshow.
Can you imagine?
Seriously.
Another career.
Uber, for their roadshow, bankers lined up back, like shoulder to shoulder, eating pasta off of plastic plates.
Okay, but the answer is you're saying that the Uber IPOs will go away this year.
They want it to. And Airbnb, which is kind of the whopper IPO we're looking at, may use a direct listing. And DoorDash, which is another SoftBank bank company, unprofitable.
What's DoorDash?
DoorDash is a food delivery company, owns most of the market.
Yeah, but Grubhub's going down in flames. That's the reports today, right?
I think DoorDash, like WeWork last year, is the IPO story to watch into the beginning of this year.
Okay, Shanali Bassick.
Thank you, Shanali.
Chief financial correspondent. We'll do more on this.
Bank earnings next week, guys.
Bank earnings and then into Bonai season.
JP Morgan coming up on Tuesday.
I did not know that. Thank you.
That stock last year up 43% almost.
It's Apple-like.
For
it's
2019.
I want to know what they say about consumer delinquencies and the consumer credit expansion. I think that's going to be an increasing focus this year.
Every time you speak, we should have some doom music that goes with it.
I just want to know
every time Lisa offers a view on everything.
What are the building plans of the JP
smile.
Morgan Tower on Park Avenue? I mean, that's what... I mean, John, to your point, the banks had an extraordinary 2000.
They did. The market did too. Equity futures this morning. Good morning to you all. Positive 12 points on the S&P. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Elite advisory firms rely on BNY Mellon's Pershing to meet the needs of their most complex clients. Karen Novak, Chief Operating Officer at Pershing Advisor Solutions, explains how.
At BNY Mellon's Pershing, we bring customized insights and strategies to help you grow your advisory business and stay on the leading edge. We can support the needs of your most sophisticated clients with a full range of investment and wealth management solutions, from access to private banking to consolidated bank and brokerage custody. Learn why so many of the largest advisory firms turn to us for the financial strength and high-touch service that BNY Mellon's Pershing can provide. Are you well positioned to stand out from your competition?
Learn more at Pershing.com or call 800-445-4467. Brokerage custody provided by Pershing LLC and other services provided by Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC. Both members of FINRA and SIPC. Private banking and bank custody provided by BNY Mellon NA. Member FDIC.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. China says its vice premier will travel to Washington next week to sign phase 1 of that trade deal. President Donald Trump had already announced that the signing ceremony would take place January 15th, but this is China's first confirmation of the signing. President Trump has also said he'll go to Beijing after the signing to start phase 2 of the talks. A fatal crash involving a Tesla on an Indiana highway has caught the attention of the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, which will launch an investigation. A Tesla slammed into a parked fire truck, leading to the death of the 23-year-old wife of the Tesla driver. The investigative agency did not say if Tesla's autopilot was active at the time of the crash, but it has looked into 14 crashes in which the Tesla technology was believed to be in use at the time. Futures point to a higher open this morning after a positive close for Wall Street yesterday, as the U.S. and Iran stepped back from a deeper military conflict. Dow futures up 97. Gina Cervetti, Bloomberg Radio.
What if you could keep the top economic experts in a conference room next to your office without having to feed them?
Do we need better optics? Do we need some substance? Do CEOs care about ESG?
We have seen quite a lot of stimulus pumped into the system already.
It's the biggest warning yet about the financial risks of climate change.
Now there are more ways to hear us. Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and at BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. We did all the research for you.
This is the grander scheme of electric vehicles.
Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Messer and Jason Kelly.
Where's their money going?
Weekday afternoons at 2 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
From New York City, this is Bloomberg Surveillance for our audience worldwide. We're live on Bloomberg Radio. Here's a snapshot of the price action this Thursday morning. Good morning to you all. Equity futures advance 10 points on the S&P 500, up around about 1/3%. The mood improves. Treasuries going nowhere. Yields lower by just a single basis point to 1.865% on a 10-year. On twos, unchanged at 1.578%. A snapshot of foreign exchange in G10. The dollar stronger against the bulk of G10, including against the pound. Sterling is where your underperformance is. Cable down by 0.5% as Governor Carney.
Meghan and Henry?
Not because of the royal family.
Oh, it is.
Because of Governor Carney, Tom Keane. Are you going to try and fit this in through the whole show?
I'm going to bust your chops
2
on
hours
this
of
all
Prince
day.
Harry and Meghan.
All day. I'm going to bust your chops.
Might be their money leaving the country.
Hashtag 2020.
They're supposed to settle in Vancouver. We'll get to that.
Is that
in a
right?
moment.
Is the loony bid this morning?
Did you see the yen this morning? 109.40.
Cool.
Looney is bid. 5 things you need to know to start your day. Thank you, Interactive Brokers. It's brought to you by Portfolio Analyst, powered by Interactive Brokers. Savvy investors use Portfolio Analyst to create a consolidated view of their finances and check the health of their complete financial portfolio. Sign up for free. Do that at portfolioanalyst.com. We've been so buried in all of the stories of Iran and Iraq. We thought we would do a real market-focused 5 things you need to know. And we have a special guest. Damian Sassauer joins us with wonderful international perspective and certainly on the correlations of the market. I'm surprised, Damian, at the melt-up, the lift that we've seen here, the melt-up 2-day conditions. Has it taken you by surprise as well?
Absolutely. It's taken me completely by surprise. I mean, I have to say, some of the moves specifically in the safe havens, gold, Swissy, I mean, they have just done a huge whipsaw on the market. And look, I mean, I think a lot of it is expected. If you look at sovereign CDS and a lot of the emerging markets we look at, specifically the Midi sovereigns, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Qatar, a lot of them haven't given back those spread widening moves that we saw on the heels of the geopolitical risk, and I think that's kind of interesting. So there is a little bit of premium built in there.
Should we get to the good news? The good news is the data's picking up in China.
Yeah.
Real signs of stabilization. It was everything everyone hoped for. We're starting to see it, aren't we?
Yeah. I mean, PPI is no longer falling off the way it once was, and CPI, I mean, pork prices have come in, so you're not seeing the pickup in it, and it opens the door for more stimulus, for sure.
Lisa Friabamish at Pantheon was adamant on your point, John Farrow, today. She really pushed against the World Bank gloom.
I have to wonder, though, how much of that's already priced in. I mean, the consensus trade for 2020 is that emerging markets will outperform. International will best the U.S. when it comes to equity performance. We are seeing banks moving into China. There was a bunch of news overnight talking about J.P. Morgan and others. I'm just wondering, it all sounds good, but everyone's been pricing in a melt-up in data for a while.
And EM equities are struggling here. I mean, let's be clear. EM equities are up 6.5% over the last 6 months. 5.5% of that occurred in the last month alone. And by the way, those consensus forecasts for 2020 all came out in the beginning of December. So the move, in many respects, has already happened. I'm not saying it's time to take stuff off. And certainly there are green shoots building. If this U.S. equity market bull grows some more horns, as Gina Martin Adams likes to say, you can see that spread into emerging markets. I'm not holding my breath here, but certainly things in China are looking a little bit better.
Well, I think you've touched on something important that I've been thinking about the last couple of days, drawing a distinction between economic risk and market risk. There is some market risk out there. The economic risk arguably has diminished over the last couple of months. It doesn't take away from the fact that actually we've priced in a very, very good economy relative to where it was 12 months ago, which goes back to quite a simple debate. Is an L-shaped recovery in the global economy sufficient to stabilize, to underpin some of the moves, to justify some of the moves we've had in global markets?
Point out, so you don't do hockey stick, you do L-shaped now.
Well,
you try to get away from
L-shaped, L-shaped, U-shaped,
Okay,
V-shaped.
sorry, carry on.
Hockey stick doesn't really work for me.
I know, that's what I was pointing out.
I'm trying to make this international.
I know.
Everyone sort of gets
Let me put my Duke of Sussex hat on here for 1 minute. And basically, and so basically, look, I mean, for me, the only thing left to go, if you're talking relative value, is for triple C's to rally, low-end triple B's to rally. So this down in quality move, they've all lagged, are now starting to rally. And that is the market risk we're talking about, because that's structural. Those are they have less liquidity. And so now if you're sitting there holding a triple C piece of paper that you can't get rid of and things go pear-shaped on you,
right,
what are you left to do?
The call at the end of the year, and we saw it in your world, was international finally got it going and finally started doing better versus U.S. equities. This is a really important question for our listeners, for our viewers, in that should they reallocate to international? Is a general statement, Mr. Sassower. What do you say?
Well, you have to see manufacturing rebound. I've been saying that a long time. We're still starting to see evidence of that. But if you just look at the demand for some of the emerging market dollar credit issues that have come through, I'm talking Indonesia, Israel, the China property credits, Long for Kogart, have all tapped the market in the first 2 weeks of this year and tapped it well. So, from my perspective, it's risk on for sure if the new issuance market has anything to say about it, Tom.
I like that with Damien, you can play the same kind of gloom music that you play with me. So I'm just saying, I'm putting it out there.
Do a podcast together.
Yeah, seriously, just they have, da-da-da. I do wonder, though, going forward, my big existential question this morning is, are we creating a narrower and narrower exit if there is some sort of shock to the system, because everyone is being so conditioned to pile in and just buy risk. And at a certain point, there has not been any consequence to any risk that's emerged. I mean, there's been no consequences. So what does that do trading-wise?
Well, with bonds especially, and emerging market bonds in particular, the levels of liquidity, when things go pear-shaped, there is no bid, Lisa. So the down move is, it's going to be extreme, right? It's like up the escalator, down the elevator in emerging markets, and a lot of, low liquidity, high-risk issues, specifically in U.S. dollar credit.
I like that, up the escalator, down the elevator. That's what Meghan and Henry are doing. John Farrow, help me here with the yield. John, I would suggest in the bond market, as Mr. Sassower mentions, the yield divergence, the vectors of lower yields or higher yields is an arch debate right now.
Record daily supply in the European bond market. in the last 24 hours, and really, really strong demand. Does this remind you of 12 months ago?
Yes.
Do you remember when we were in Switzerland and all of a sudden these big issues started to come through from the peripheral countries? I remember, you don't remember a lot for different reasons.
Which hotel bar?
Spent a lot of time in the piano bar. We can talk about that in a couple of weeks' time. We had 2 issues yesterday from some European peripheral countries. Ireland, Portugal, selling 4 billion euros of debt. Order books for both of those issues, 20 billion.
Why is that?
Demand out there right now still is just sky high, isn't it?
Seriously, why?
Well, I mean, I'll tell you, take the other side of that. Lost in all the mix, that U.S. 10-year auction yesterday was poor.
Yes,
and
it was
and the bear steepening off the back of that. I mean, only a few months ago, Tom, we were talking about an inversion in 210s. Now we're at nearly 30 basis points. So what's changed?
Well, that auction came at probably the worst time for the Treasury, right? Because it was right after we saw the tensions ease. We had basically everything diffused, and all of a sudden it was risk on again, and those havens lost bid.
I want to go to another theme here, and it drove me. I went to Marty's.
I'm a little
no, it's just going to be on Henry and Meghan, although they'll probably set up a hedge fund. I'm seeing hedge fund returns, and they underperform the SPX, and I know you can rationalize that. Damien, when does the shell game end for hedge funds?
Well, not if you're .72 or Citadel for sure. I mean, the game keeps on going. But yes, no, I mean, we've seen a lot of hedge fund closures, Tom. I mean, look at Lewis Bacon, More Capital, a lot of
layoffs with Cliff Asness in the last 24 hours.
Exactly. AQR is laying off 10% of their force. I mean, look, don't get me started on hedge funds because, I'm a fee-oriented guy. But, I mean, the fact of the matter is this. Some people can still make money out there in a challenging environment like Stevie Cohen and Ken Griffin. And so, take nothing away from the work they've done, but it is very difficult for active managers in an environment where the S&P is doing 30% a year.
We're going to rip up the script here. We welcome all of you on Bloomberg Television, Bloomberg Radio Worldwide. Damien Sassower, we have sources here. Pharaoh's done the research that you, more than anyone else out there, understand the mysteries of the Green Bay Packers, the Seattle Seahawks, and the rest of them now. And it's just this idea of fantasy football. You are a god in fantasy football?
I have won the Black Sunday Fantasy Football League amongst us Rybrookers up in Westchester County.
How many teams are in that league?
There are 12 teams in that league.
Wow.
And I am one of them. And it's a big, yes, it's a big money league for sure.
It's a big money league.
They don't care
I had a
about
video. I had
the yield curve or any of this stuff. How do you win at fantasy football with the glory of 7 figures that you did?
How much time do you have here, Tom?
We got enough time to this is the question that matters. Pharaoh's taking notes.
What a lot of people do is they just kind of look at the consensus figures. They look at what people are looking at out there. What I like to do is look at the actual scoring of a league. I like to kind of know the way the game is being played and what the rules of the game are before I decide to make my moves. A lot of people don't do that. I'm not taking anything away from my competitors. They're very good. They're very formidable, but no one's nearly as good as me when it comes to
fantasy. What do you see this weekend? What do you see this week? I watched
this
a little
weekend.
bit of Seattle. Are the Seattles good?
I'm a big Ravens fan, obviously. I like Lamar Jackson. I think the Seahawks do have a chance. I think it's going to be tough to unseat the Packers, but, it can be done. I think KC wins.
Same.
Okay, KC, very good. Damien Sassower.
That was my analysis on the situation.
I had no idea what he was talking about.
No clue.
Very good. The Bloomberg NJIT STEM report. Good morning. Brought to you by New Jersey Institute of Technology, a top 100 national university, and the latest U.S. news and world report college rankings. Learn more at news.njit.edu. Here's Bob Moon.
Tom, Jonathan, good morning. Here's what's making news in science, technology, engineering, and math. New guidelines for autonomous vehicle makers have been unveiled by the Trump administration. Transportation Secretary Elaine Chao says they'll ensure U.S. leadership in developing new technologies. But they fall short of expectations and auto safety advocates by continuing to rely on voluntary standards without specific regulations. The nonprofit Advocates for Highway and Auto Safety complains this is a science experiment playing out in real time on our roadways without any safeguards. A startup heavily backed by Hollywood is wagering you're ready to set aside YouTube and TikTok to watch star-studded short-form videos on your phone, and that you'll pay for it. The company behind this billion-dollar bet is Quibi, founded by former Hollywood executive Jeffrey Katzenberg. It's being led by former Hewlett-Packard Enterprise CEO Meg Whitman. She spoke to Bloomberg at CES, the big tech show in Las Vegas.
We think that people will be on Quibi during the day, 7 in the morning till 7 at night, on-the-go viewing, where they have a chance to watch very fantastic Hollywood quality content, but in those short bites.
Quibi has backing from all the major movie movie studios and entertainment companies $1 billion invested in original programming and star power in the form of creators and producers, including Steven Spielberg. Still, it's an enormous gamble, especially considering that several earlier efforts in mobile entertainment fell flat. That's the Bloomberg NJIT STEM report. Tom, Jonathan.
Bubba, thanks so much. Time now for our news. Here's Michael Barr.
Tom, Lisa, John, thank you very much. Iran's Civil Aviation Authority said today the crew of the Ukrainian jetliner that crashed outside Tehran the previous day never made a radio call for help. Wednesday's crash killed all 176 people on board. The plane crashed just hours after Iran launched a barrage of missiles at U.S. forces. Iranian officials blamed mechanical trouble. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says that at least 63 Canadians were on board the doomed plane.
On behalf of all Canadians, I want to express my deepest condolences to those who are mourning the loss of a loved one. Your loss is indescribable, and this is a heartbreaking tragedy.
The House is expected to vote later today on a resolution aimed at restraining the president's ability to use military action against Iran without congressional approval. It comes as two Republican senators, Mike Lee and Rand Paul, now say they support the move after their dissatisfaction with the security briefing they were given over the killing of Iran's top general. Paul says the argument that going to war with Iraq allows a president to order the killing of an Iranian general is ridiculous.
In the briefing and in public, this administration has argued that the vote to topple Saddam Hussein in 2002 now applies to military action in Iraq. That is absurd.
It's college acceptance season, and WalletHub says these towns and cities go right to the front of the class for housing and just a fun place to live. Austin, Texas is number 1, 2 is Orlando, 3 is Scottsdale, Arizona. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. John, Tom, Lisa.
Michael Barr, thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much indeed. That was the news. Let's get you some price action. Equity futures are firmer. We're up by almost 10 points on the S&P 500. Positive 1/3%. As Middle East tensions fade, we get back to the same old stories. A signing ceremony in Washington, D.C. next week. China confirming Leo He will be traveling to the nation's capital. From New York, good morning to you all. This is Bloomberg.
With the Bloomberg Business of Sports Report, I'm Michael Barr. Nike has signed a multi-year deal to be the official jersey provider for Liverpool Soccer Club. It hands the current powerhouse of European football to the world's largest sportswear maker by revenue. The agreement follows a prickly court battle between Liverpool and its current outfitter New Balance Athletics over contract terms that expire this year. Sunderland said that it has started the process to sell the UK soccer team just days after a coordinated fan backlash against its current owner. In a statement, the board of Sunderland says it feels it has no option but to sell the club after a recent fan campaign asking for insurance entrepreneur Stuart Donald to depart. Donald said when he bought the team 18 months ago that he would not outstay his welcome. The statement went on to say the team is one of the few in English soccer to be debt-free and break even on an operational basis. And that is a Bloomberg Business of Sports report. I'm Michael Barr.
Hey, y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
I used to be a bit of a rubbish sleeper. I'd toss and turn all night, and somehow I could never find the comfy bit of the mattress. It was a proper nightmare. That's what brought me here, testing mattresses in the Witch Test Lab. We use a custom-made barrel rolling machine to simulate a decade's worth of use. And the mattresses that perform best are the only ones we recommend for your bedroom.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
Headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Kohl's reporting a slight drop in holiday sales, reinforcing concerns that department stores lost ground despite robust growth in U.S. consumer spending. Same-store sales, a key measure of retail success, declined 0.2% in November and December, and Kohl's shares are moving lower this morning, down 5.8%. U.S. stock index futures are advancing while stocks rose across Europe and Asia, extending a relief rally after the U.S. and Iran appear to step back from a deeper military conflict. The yen and gold declining. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures up 9 points this morning. Dow futures up 82. NASDAQ futures up 36. The DAX in Germany up 1.2%. CAC in Paris up 0.25%. And the FTSE 100 up 0.4%. 10-year Treasury up 3/30 seconds. Yield 1.86%. Yield on the 2-year 1.57%. NYMEX crude oil is up 0.6% or 34 cents at $59.96 a barrel. COMEX gold down 0.5% or $7.30 at $15.52.90 an ounce. The euro 1.1112 against the dollar. British pound 1.3038 and the yen at 109.36. And Verizon Communications said its Fios video and internet service would abandon the cable industry tradition of locking customers into long-term bundled packages. It's the latest effort to contend with the rise of cord cutting. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom, John, and Lisa.
Karen, thanks so much. Greatly appreciate it. Lisa Bramwitz, John Farrow, and Tom Keene, thank you for being with us worldwide and coast to coast as well. John, I want to go to the real yield, which I know you're putting together for tomorrow, and I know, Lisa, you follow this carefully. Double digit, equity. The Bloomberg Barclays total return, John, up 12% moonshot off of the bottom of late 2018. I mean, bonds are double digit. Can they do it again? What's the thought?
Corporate credit had a massive 2019. I think corporate credit was up around about 15% in the United States of America. And it was the part of the market that really did well that many people thought wouldn't. It was triple Bs. It was the bottom of investment grade. And Lisa, so many people came into last year worried about some of those big names, those big companies that have a triple B credit rating. And then they kind of got religion and started doing the things that were hurting them, stopped doing those. And all of a sudden they started to get a massive bid and the market went with it.
Yeah, although how much of it was driven by fundamentals and how much was it driven by a lust for yield? I mean, because we also saw that in triple Cs. But it really raises a question about the fundamental economy and whether that supports it.
2020, a big year ahead, and I wonder whether if 2019 was the year for triple Bs, whether 2020 can be the year for triple Cs. Slowly, people coming around to that idea. Should we bring in our next guest, shall we? I'm pleased to say that Jeffrey Rosenberg joins us now, Senior Portfolio Manager at BlackRock Systemic Fixed Income Team. Jeff, great to catch up with you. Walk me through the conviction calls from the team at BlackRock going into a new year.
Well, you know, it's a backdrop of a year for which, you know, you're coming off of very, very strong policy supported returns across both debt and equity. And you think about what happened in 2019, it was the opposite of what people expected, what people got in 2018, right? Remember, 2018 was both stocks and bonds were down. 2019, 30% stocks, almost 10% in bonds. And so you go into 2020, and certainly that's a year that's not going to be repeated because that's a year about policy. And what we see here, forget the economy. The economy has moved in tiny increments relative to 20 and 30% swings in market performance. So it tells you it's really much more about policy. And what we're seeing for 2020 is policies on hold. So without the tailwinds of a policy support, you're really bringing down expectations across the board. It's a year where fixed income returns are going to barely be able to squeak out the yields, and you're starting at lower yield levels. So you're bringing those fixed income return expectations lower with the possibility of slightly, but no one has higher interest rates. No one has, ourselves included. The Fed is on hold, and there's an asymmetry. If anything bad happens, this Fed is going to cut rates. If anything good happens to inflation, they're going to watch it. So a lot more. I'll pause there.
So is this a year to go for the coupon, to buy the riskiest debt and just hold it?
Well, it's not at the start of the year the time to go for the riskiest debt, because there's another aspect to what happened in 2019's returns, which is you had a great equity year and you had a great rate year. So your coupons are very low and your spreads are very tight. So valuations across the board, across credit. Now, I think in the earlier segment you were talking about triple C's. There's a pocket of underperformance in 2019 where it was really a quality-led rally. And so you saw at the end of December, middle of December, a little bit of the bottom end of the capital stack underperforming. But do you want to start the year where everything is priced for perfection, reaching for the bottom of the capital stack? No. You want to be more defensive. It's not that we think spreads are going to widen, but you have no margin for error in valuation, so it's more up in quality to start.
Jeff Rosenberg, you've got a pro chart, which is a double vector chart, and I'm not going to go to the dynamics, folks, because I don't want people driving off the road, but it's the relationship of the equity market to the bond market, and then also worried about the market separate. It's called conditional correlations. Translate that for mere mortals, and that do you delink a bond belief from the equity market this year?
Yeah, it's a really important point when you're thinking about your overall portfolio. A lot of times we talk about what's the outlook for the stock market, what's the outlook for the bond market, what are you doing in bonds? But people invest in their portfolios, and so it's about how do the pieces relate to one another. And the expectation in terms of the relation is I'm owning safe bonds, high quality bonds, treasury bonds, even my municipal bond portfolio. That's mostly related to interest rates and has a higher quality element to it, which means that bond portion of that portfolio shouldn't have a lot of sensitivity and actually should move in the opposite direction, should provide some diversification, some ballast against my equities. But those bonds don't have a lot of yield. So when I start adding a lot of yield, the earlier questions, should I go down in quality? What about high yield? What about bank loans? What about EM? The juicy stuff is great. It helps me to achieve my income, but the conditional correlation is a reminder that when things go bad in my equity market, when things are going bad in my equity portfolio, if I have a lot of that higher yielding stuff, what I'm introducing into my portfolio is a lot of conditional correlation, meaning my bonds are going to go down. I'm going to see the sensitivity of my higher risk bond portfolio when I least can afford it. That is when my equity portfolio is going down. So it's just about remembering that, assessing the balance between my income producing, my riskier portions of my bond portfolio has to be balanced against what I'm doing on my equity portfolio. And it's not the kind of overall, well, most of the time these things, are okay. It's what happens when the stock market is going down 5 or 10%. And that's when you really see the sensitivity of these riskier portions of the bond market.
Jeff, really thoughtful stuff, and appreciate your insight. Jeff Rosenberg there of BlackRock.
Wonderful.
And I think that's going to resonate with a lot of people. 2019 was the year of policy-driven markets. The biggest cumulative easing, I think, for global central banks, according to many of the analysts out there, since the financial crisis. You're not going to get a repeat of that in 2020. I think that's fair to say.
No, you're not going to get a repeat of that. The question is, can fundamentals take over? And that's why it's going to be the year of show me the money. And if it can't, what could potentially happen? Today, we are seeing that melt up, gather steam, as Tom was talking about, as people slough off the idea of rising tensions between Iran and the U.S. diffused. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
Why has Martin here loves being his own boss, but staying on top of all the tax rules used to drive him up the stud wall. This 31st of January self-assessment deadline, however, Martin won't be hitting the roof. Just a few buttons. He's using QuickBooks Self-Employed to make sure his tax bill is all above board. It tracks income and expenses, so he always knows what he owes. You could say he smashed it.
Visit quickbooks.co.uk for details. Intuit QuickBooks.
We can't make traffic move faster during rush hour, but we can help you catch up on the news with TuneIn. With live around-the-clock news from MSNBC.
In the UK, they're significantly worse. When the president gets up to the podium...
CNBC and Fox News Talk.
The Fox News poll sizing up the race for 2020 found that each of the 5 top Democrats...
You can use your stop and go for good by staying in touch with the world. Search news to hear what's happening now.
You might already know that TuneIn allows you to listen to all the pro sports leagues wherever you go. But did you know TuneIn is also home to the wide world of college sports?
Open three, DeAndre Hunter got
Hand off Carruthers. Big hole right side. He leaps and he surges in. Touchdown.
From live college football, basketball, and baseball games to podcasts and coaches shows fueling your love for the game in your school. And the best part is, it's all free. Search college sports to find your team or league.
Did you know your favorite radio stations are in your pocket? Yes, the TuneIn app lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio anywhere you want. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Down the middle of the 10, got to the 5, tumbles in, touchdown.
TuneIn has your NFL playoffs live all weekend. So when you're running to the store or stuck in traffic, TuneIn has you covered.
He's taking contact, and he kicks it in. Touchdown. Puts his head down, crashes and spins, and dives. Touchdown.
Search NFL and get prepared for the action.
Touchdown.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Pascal gobbles up the rebound and slams it down.
Catch your favorite NBA team right here on TuneIn.
A step back, deep three, it's up and in.
Search NBA on TuneIn and hear all the action. The NBA lives on TuneIn.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip
Follow
Bayless.
at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
To get it right the first time.
We always talk about the losers in a trade war.
You benefit if you're just further away from China.
So that you can too.
What are the ramifications if she crumbles or doesn't crumble?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
The good news is the economy is strong. The bad news is the economy is strong.
Financial crises take a really long time to recover from.
Finance.
The strong job market's pulling people back in.
You can't have for very long, monetary union without a fiscal union.
Investment.
What we preach is extreme diversification.
It's hard to have sustained productivity without capital investment.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrow on Bloomberg Radio.
Good morning, everyone. John Farrow and Tom Keene. Lisa Abramo's with us today. Finally, it took us, 10, 11 days of January to get Miss Abramowitz with us today. She's back here talking up the bond market. Bond market, is it a melt up in the bond market, Lisa?
No, it's a meltdown.
It's a meltdown.
You've got yields climbing up a little bit, but not as much as you would think.
Not as much as you think, given equity markets. We were up 12 earlier on SPX, now up 8 on the futures. Dow futures up 77, almost a 29,000 watch for the Dow about an hour, maybe 2 hours ago. Thrilled you're with us. We'll do a lot of market talk, I should say, today, and we're really going to drill down into foreign exchange as a global litmus paper here in a moment. We welcome all of you nationwide. Sirius XM Channel 119. Good morning, Boston. Good morning, New York. Good morning, Washington. Good morning, Vancouver. Because, John, it appears that the couple will move to Vancouver. Mark Landis in the New York Times suggesting Vancouver would be the domicile.
Would you like to cover it? We can make you the royal correspondent if you'd like.
I think, I don't know if I am.
Well, since he no longer needs to be the senior Brexit correspondent, because that's about to happen.
No, the New York Post
we can make him the royal correspondent.
The New York Post changed that discussion today with their cover Megxit.
Megxit.
Megxit is
nice.
what they put it. So we'll move on from that. We got a lot
I'd love for you to move on. on from
We'd
that.
love to move on for that because Pharaoh's giving me the Pharaoh Darby look as well. Stephen Englander is a most interesting guy. He is truly outstanding in the research of foreign exchange, and for years has really focused on the nuances, including the cross rates, which is maybe not euro, dollar, yen, but the more nuances there. John, why don't you bring in Mr. Englander of Standard Chartered Bank?
Steve joins us now. He is the global head of FX research for North America and, of course, the head of macro strategy as well. Steve, great to catch up with you. Let's talk about it. The prospect of easing in 2020, muted compared to what we got in 2019. The areas of FX, the areas of the world that you're focused on right now, where are they, Steve?
Look, we're looking for 2020 to be a broad dollar weakness year, both against EM, probably against EM initially, but as the year progresses, more against the euro and the yen. We don't expect the Fed to ease, but I'd say that the risk is probably concentrated more that they ease if any kind of negative occurrence happens, or if perhaps if inflation continues to disappoint. And that should put downward pressure on the dollar. And just a few minutes ago, Clarida was indicating, I think, that they were not going to be so quick about withdrawing liquidity from the market, saying that they might need some repos through April. So that dollar liquidity is going to weigh on the dollar as well.
To be clear here, Steve, you think that we could get a stronger Japanese yen in an environment where, relative to 12 months ago, the data starts to come in just a little bit better?
Well, U.S. data we think will be pretty, stable. Trend maybe a little bit weaker, possibly stronger, but nothing special. The key for us is if you look at the Fed discussion, they are obsessed with the risk that they're going to get to the zero bound. And the message to the bond market is that the Fed, maybe not over a 6-month horizon, but if you look over a 6-year horizon, is likely to be spending a lot of time buying bonds, talking yields down, and we expect that to affect the long end of the bond market. So we don't think we'll stay at 186.
This call for a weaker dollar has been a consensus trade, and Jeffrey Gunlock of Double Line Capital came out earlier this week saying, my highest conviction idea is that the dollar will weaken. The question is why? And this is where people diverge. According to Gunlock, he attributes it to foreigners starting to divest from the United States, which he thinks is going to be a theme of the next few years. Do you agree with that thesis as to why the dollar will weaken?
Well, if you state it broadly, that the U.S. assets have had a tremendous run, and their attractiveness has dominated the global asset markets. This year, we think they're going to be less attractive relative to other assets, particularly emerging markets at the beginning of the year, where we see risk premium being removed from those assets. We're not crazy about the U.S. equity market. We had the tax bill 2 years ago. We had the ups and downs of the tariff wars. We don't see what the new thing is. We think that investors will begin to look abroad.
Well, they're going to look abroad, but in what way are they going to do that? We need to remind people that the Standard Chartered Bank is one of the great voices of emerging market banking and emerging market nations as well. But Steve Englander, then how do you express that when we look abroad? What is the prescription? What is the to-do?
Well, we like bond markets in Asia in particular, looking at Indonesia, Malaysia, a couple of other places. We like their currencies as well. We think that even the CNYs and CNH have room to appreciate, not tremendous room given the limited move in the phase one deal, but we think that they could go into the mid-680s by the middle of the year. All of that is very positive for Asia emerging markets.
Right now I'm looking at the MSCI Emerging Market Index focused on currencies. Highest level since June 2018. I find this fascinating. It's sort of talking about the melt up. There was a little bit of a sell-off when we saw the rising tensions between Iran and the U.S., and now it's just shooting back up.
Steve Englander, are they independent from renminbi? I mean, the basic idea in equity and even in economic growth, World Bank, IMF, and that, is everything is linked to China. Are those currency moves and the ability to make money in currency or in international bonds, are they quote-unquote linked to China, or are they separate?
It's not a one-to-one linkage, but broadly speaking, when the dollar is getting weaker, and the China's certainly one of the 3 or 4 major currencies in the world right now, when the dollar is getting weaker against CNY,
it leaves more room for other currencies to appreciate against the dollar. I think what emerging markets don't want to see is the Chinese trying to devalue their currency, push it up over 7. There's no sign that they're going to do that. We think that it will drift in the opposite direction. And that gives them comfort. And I think investors will buy into that scenario.
It's been sleepy. Are you suggesting next year is not going to be sleepy? 2020, there's actually alpha, as they say, to be made?
Well, look, we do have the U.S. election at in November, so that's going to be something that comes on the horizon. I think investors are worried about it. They don't know how to hedge it, so they're ignoring it for the moment. But I think the bigger story, I think, will be the downward pressure on U.S. bonds at bond yields, and that's going to, I think, lead to a broad dollar sell-off, which will be good for the world. I think that there's a general consensus among policymakers and probably even among European policymakers that the world would be a better place if the dollar was weaker.
Well, Steve, let's talk about that. What's driving Treasury yields lower?
Inflation doesn't seem to be going anywhere. And if you look at the discussion, including some of the papers that were presented at the American Economics Association, the Fed is really obsessed with the idea that if you're afraid of hitting the lower bound, if you're afraid that inflation is never going to get close to your targets, you will consistently need to have an easier monetary policy. And that, I think, is not yet priced into the long end.
Well, Steve, what are you saying here? That the Fed's going to stay here for a long time, even if things start to pick up? Or are you saying the Fed's going to adjust lower again at some point in the near term?
Well, no, look, they won't adjust lower unless there's a provocation. But I think what the markets will see and recognize is that the Fed will be very quick to do QE, stay in QE, will be very quick to do give forward guidance of low rates for longer. And if you're talking about the 10-year Treasury, that gets built into the price. And right now, that's not really built into the price.
Steve, I think this is the situation that some people listening to this might struggle with. If we face a situation where the Federal Reserve may have to cut interest rates or reintroduce QE, if we face a situation where Treasury yields are still grinding lower, typically that's the kind of situation, globally speaking, where you'd expect the dollar to be bid because the global economy wasn't doing so well. Steve, try and reconcile those kind of things together for me.
Well, look, I think that when we saw the dollar bid, and you look across 2018, 2019, and even over the last week, it was periods of acute risk in the market, whether it was a U.S.-Iran war or whether it was the possibility of an open tariff war. I think what we're talking about is U.S. economic, call it sluggishness, maybe, inflation sluggishness, right, lack of attractiveness in U.S. asset markets. That's qualitatively different than being afraid of an apocalypse.
Stephen, thank you so much. Stephen Engler with us with the Standard Chartered Bank, head of global FX research and North American macro strategy. What do you got, Lisa?
Well, I just want to build on what you were mentioning before with Kohl's. And the reason why is because it raises questions about the strength of the consumer, because it's not just Kohl's and the shares are down more than 7%.
The department store in the Midwest.
The department store in general. You've got JCPenney and L Brands also reporting weaker than expected holiday sales. And you're seeing shares across the board down. And again, I think it's going to go to this bigger question of, is this a sign of a weaker U.S. consumer driving more sluggish growth, to Stephen Engler's point, or is this specific to Kohl's, JCPenney, and L Brands?
No, it's specific to the number of boxes outside in the lobby of the Manson. I live in it. This is nothing more than a transfer to Amazon,
one of the best performing stocks last year, Target. One of the worst, Macy's. Execution. Nothing to do with the macro backdrop, all about execution.
So is that the case, though? Because then why have analysts gotten it so wrong so consistently?
Well,
why do they keep underwhelming?
No, I'm just saying, some have gotten it right.
But I'm just saying, why do even the C-suite at these companies fail to get it right? Why are they giving expectations that are too high? Because isn't that the classic CEO requirement? It's just to underball, lowball everything that they're going to end up saying?
If you line up 10 C-class officers, particularly in something as visible as retail, 1 or 2 are going to get it right, and the others aren't. We're going to talk about this. This is going to be a real theme. And when do retail earnings, like 30 days? I mean, they take longer to come out than J.P. Morgan on Tuesday, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's go to the news in New York City. Here's Michael Barr.
Tom, Lisa, John, thank you very much. Vice President Mike Pence says President Trump was right to act in the killing of Iranian General Qasem Soleimani last week. Pence on ABC's Good Morning America refuted the president's critics of the administration after yesterday's briefing, including Republican Senators Rand Paul and Mike Lee.
When it comes to intelligence, we have to protect sources and methods, and so there's only a certain amount that we can share with every member of Congress.
President Trump says Iran appears to be standing down. Meanwhile, the president heads to Ohio for a campaign rally tonight in Toledo. A growing number of Senate Democrats are saying it's about time for House Speaker Nancy Pelosi to send the articles of impeachment passed last month over to the Senate. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell continues to criticize Pelosi over the delay. McConnell on the Senate floor told Democrats there will be no haggling over Senate procedures.
Democrats friends are losing patience, just like the American people are losing patience. The country knows this absurdity should not go on.
The Speaker has said she wants a clear determination on witnesses before letting the trial begin. Amazon's doorbell app Ring fired at least 4 employees for improperly seeking access to customer data over the last 4 years. In addition to investigating and firing its employees, Ring has taken steps to limit data access to a small pool of workers. It's the latest in a number of privacy headaches for the video doorbell maker, including allegations that employees passed around unencrypted footage captured by the product. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. John?
Michael Barr, thank you very much, sir. In around about 17 minutes' time, we'll have some more economic data in America for you. Initial jobless claims coming through at 8:30 Eastern. Look out for that. It's payrolls Friday tomorrow. Your median estimate in our Bloomberg survey, 165,000. That print 24 hours away. To get you up to speed on the price action, equity futures on the S&P 500, positive 9 points. We're up 0.28%. And in the bond market, treasuries yields relatively unchanged, down not even a basis point on a 10-year to 1.869%. From New York this morning, good morning to you all. This is Bloomberg.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers market know with the right partner and a flexible system you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, Our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/C's change.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Influential conversations from Bloomberg Television. Here's Taylor Riggs.
Bitcoin has climbed at the highest level since November after breaching the $8,000 price threshold. Concerns about an escalation in the conflict between the U.S. and Iran are seen as contributing to the rally in Bitcoin, which is not managed by a government. To discuss, we're joined by BitPay Chief Commercial Officer Sunny Singh. Thanks so much for joining us. We've been in this trading range. We're not overbought at these levels, but that key 8,000 level means we could be breaking out of this trading range. Do you see the price increase recently as technically driven?
Yeah, so great question, actually. I'm obviously not a technical trader, but again, technical and high-frequency trading is really what drives this market in Bitcoin. And anytime you have an unforeseen circumstance, like the Iran incident that happened a couple of days ago, that adds some new buyers to the market, they weren't expecting that, and that bumps it up. And that little bump, actually, in buying pressure really drives it to be up next, 20% in 2 days.
So I am shocked to hear that it's moving higher with gold and seen as a safe haven. How is that possible?
We see that happen a lot. Now, I don't think people actually went and sold their GE stock and all that and bought Bitcoin. But I see what happens is just a little bit of people start buying Bitcoin, and that, with the technical trading, really bumps it up and makes it go a lot higher, a lot faster.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
First Word breaking news desk for today's morning call. Here's Bill Maloney. Bill, good morning.
And good morning, Karen. That's right. U.S. futures are maintaining their gains since the last time we spoke, with Dow futures up 86 points. S&P's gained 9, while the Nasdaq futures climb by 43. The U.S. 10-year yield at 1.87%. Gold is down 3 points. WTI crude futures are a little changed, and Japan rose 2.3% overnight, while European markets are also trading higher, led by 1.2% gains in Germany. Back in the U.S. on the economic front at 8:30, initial jobs claims. And after the bell last night, Bed Bath & Beyond pulled its full-year outlook. Shares are down 12% in the pre-market. And regarding earnings this morning, Kohl's now sees year-adjusted EPS at the low end of the range. Shares are down 6% pre-market. In deal news, HP again rejected the takeover offer from Xerox. And in other news, Apple's price target raised to $350 over at Jefferies. Wrapping things up, Goldman Sachs was raised to buy at Bank of America. Coca-Cola raised to outperform at Credit Suisse. eBay was cut to underperform at Jefferies. And Tesla was cut to sell over at CFRA and cut to neutral over at Robert Baird. Live from the First Breaking News Desk, I'm Bill Maloney. Karen?
All right, Bill, thank you. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. You can hear live breaking news of your Bloomberg. Just type squawk on your terminal, SQUAWK. Tom, John, and Lisa.
Karen, greatly appreciate it. Good morning, everyone. Bloomberg Surveillance. We're thrilled that you're with us this morning. Futures up 9, Dow futures up 85. Lots going on this morning as well. We've got just a number of themes going on. But to me, John, the major theme is the market recovery.
Doing okay, aren't we? We're doing okay. We're positive 9 points on the S&P 500, up by around about 1/3 to give you a feel of things elsewhere in the bond market. Treasuries, unchanged yields, 1.869%. A note HSBC Steve Major lands in my inbox.
Oh, please, what is
Lisa Abramowitz emailed it to me. My producer emailed it to me. Everyone is sending this note
Has
to
your
me.
name written on it.
Here's the quote. The decade of denial saw expectations of cyclical recovery often disappointed and a similarly misplaced belief in the view that bond yields would rise. Low for longer interest rates are a reality, no longer a forecast.
But it's also capitulation, right? We're finally seeing analysts expect this, and is that the time when people get sort of surprised with rising yields? It almost seems laughable to say that, but, could we see it?
Funny enough, Tom and I spoke to Steve just before Christmas, and I said, Steve, you're feeling a little bit uncomfortable that a lot of people have capitulated to your view of the world after repeating it for the best part of, 5 years?
And what he said?
He said, yeah, just a little bit.
Part of it is Trade Solution. Brendan Murray joins us. He leads all of our trade coverage here at Bloomberg, and really an important job in 2019 and maybe even ever so more. What is the symbolism, Brendan, first of the Chinese visiting in mid-January for a signature event?
Yeah, so it was 10 days ago that President Trump tweeted out that he was going to sign this Phase 1 deal on January 15th. That's next Wednesday. And we just got confirmation today that the Chinese Vice Premier Liu He, who's a very influential official in the Chinese government, will lead the delegation to Washington next week. It's largely symbolic. It shows the importance that the Chinese put on this agreement that's going to be signed. But we've been waiting to hear the official word, and we got it today.
Waiting to see the document too, Brendan. Has this been translated into Chinese yet?
We understand that it's been translated, and both sides have agreed to the wording. It's about a 100-page document, and it's divided into 7 chapters, from what we understand. And but we haven't seen the document yet, and all we've seen is kind of an outline that the U.S. government put out a few weeks ago. The devil is in the details, obviously, and we'll be trying to report that out over the next couple of days.
So, what are some of the details that could potentially be crucial to understand that we will get a better understanding of once we get the document?
So the centerpiece for Trump, at least, is the agricultural purchases, the pledge by China to buy an additional $200 billion in U.S. Goods and services over the next few years. That obviously, heading into a re-election campaign, shows that you can get a big customer for our products in China now. But and those largely would be farm goods and energy. But that's a commodity deal. This is supposed to be a trade deal, and it's supposed to involve things like intellectual property and the technology transfer that U.S. wants China to crack down on, and financial services access. So the real trade news will come in those other categories, aside from the commodity purchases.
But Brendan, as you know, because you've repeated so often, the commodity piece of this particular agreement was meant to be the easy part, and increasingly, as we got to the end of last year, it became the complex part. Do we really have a binding agreement with the Chinese to buy X amount of agricultural goods every single year?
Well, the U.S. side would argue that they would, and the enforcement of that could come through things like tariff threats that if you don't live up to your promises, we'll put tariffs back on, and where this thing really has teeth is whether it's enforceable. Plenty of U.S. presidents have gotten China to promise things. The follow through is really where it matters, and so you're right. It depends on whether China can live up to its pledges.
So the questions for 2020, number one, phase 2, are we going to actually see real negotiations? But also, will some of the issues between the U.S. and Europe heat up? We have American wine shop owners and importers already saying that they're going to have mass layoffs due to some of the tariffs on French wine and champagne.
I love Lisa's insight on this. Wine shop owners. Have they been complaining to you?
They have been. They've been
calling
up
the local wine shop owners.
Well, I heard that Tom got some insight in this too.
Don't bring Tom into this.
That's true. Okay, Brendan, why don't you save us here? So is this going to be a
Brendan,
serious issue?
one of our biggest fans on Madison Avenue up a little bit on the east side. Go.
It's interesting you bring up Europe because in a much less heralded meetings that are going on next week, the European Union's new trade commissioner Phil Hogan comes to Washington for his first face-to-face discussions with U.S. officials. So to try to kick off some good spirited trade negotiations that the U.S. is going to have with the EU this year. So and exactly things like the French digital tax and the U.S. tariffs on French wine. That's all going to be part of it.
Brendan, don't touch my Polini Montrachet. Brendan Murray, thank you so much. He is all of our trade coverage, really leading a huge team on that. We're going to do some, business at hand here for Bloomberg Surveillance, welcoming all of you on TV and radio worldwide. First, Mohammed from California emails in. He loved the American football segui we did with Damien.
Did he like that? What did he have to say?
He said he just liked how he went to fantasy football and all that. He was asking where the Jets analysis
Where are the
was.
Jets?
The Jets aren't there as well. And then I got another email in upset that we're not giving equal time as we discuss Henry and Meghan to Matthew and Cartier on Love Island, Australia. I mean, the bottom line, John, bring us up to speed, please. Love Island, Australia is not in hibernation,
I think I'm watching the 2018 version of Love Island, Australia at the moment.
You're watching the live version, right?
From New York City.
It's always summer.
So
Really
pleased to see a clock with 10 seconds left on it. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong.
Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Welcome to Nuffield Health Battersea, a gym built around you. You get regular health MOTs to create a plan that works for you, with physios and personal trainers on site. You'll find a wide range of equipment and classes, and our expert team will support you to get the most out of your health, fitness, and your membership. Join today to get the rest of the month free. Search Nuffield Health. Specialists in you. 12-month commitments only. Facilities stated are in most gyms. Visit nuffieldhealth.com/terms.
Sometimes in business, you have to take risks, but trading across borders and currencies shouldn't be one of them. With Western Union Business Solutions, we can help you manage the risk of doing business internationally. Our valuable experience, expert knowledge, and extensive global network makes us the ideal trusted partner for your business. And with our customer-focused support team, you'll receive a dedicated solution and personalized service. Visit westernunionbusiness.com. Western Union Business Solutions, a global financial network you can trust.
This is not a cat. This is not a rocket. And this is not a sail.
That's right. At Smarty Mobile, we're not having a sale. While others are slashing prices, we're introducing our best ever new plans. Take our new 30 gig data SIM for just £10 a month. With unlimited calls and texts and no speed restrictions, credit checks or contract tying you down, why shop around? New plans, great value. Now that's Smarty. Grab yours today. Search Smarty Mobile. See smarty.co.uk for terms.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
From New York City, this is Bloomberg Surveillance for our audience worldwide. We're live on Bloomberg Radio with equity futures pushing higher, up by 10 points on the S&P 500, firmer by 1/3%. Your economic indicators this morning are brought to you by Commonwealth Financial Network. For the sixth straight time, J.D. Power ranks Commonwealth #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms. Visit commonwealth.com to learn more. With the economic data, I'm pleased to say we can cross over to Vinny. Dow Judice.
Hello, Jonathan. Yes, a prelude to Friday's government employment report. Jobless claims down for the fourth week in a row. Last week down to 214,000. That's also a 5-week low. Less volatile 4-week average also down. Yesterday we saw some pretty decent numbers from ADP on private payrolls. Tomorrow, economists surveyed by Bloomberg looking for a gain of 160,000 jobs in December. Now get this, that's well above what's needed to accommodate U.S. population growth, and it would bring the total for 2019 to roughly 2.1 million. Still, that gain, that respectable gain, would be the smallest in about a decade. So that sort of underscores how strong the labor market has been. One other point, though, please. Wages. Keep an eye on wages. A lot of people are working, a lot of people working 2 or 3 jobs. I'm Vinny Dale, Judice, Bloomberg Radio. Let's go back to New York.
Vinny, thanks so much, and perfectly said. We'll get to that with Mitch Rochelle in a moment. John, we got a note off of these reports, a pop to the market. It's small, but it's there.
Initial jobless claims are rock solid. You are going to be very hard pushed to construct an argument that the labour market is showing cracks when initial jobless claims are at 214,000 in America.
There is going to be a question, where are the workers coming from? And the idea that people are working multiple jobs, how do we assess this in terms of the economic strength? And I think that is going to be a key question for 2020.
The ebb and the flow. And right now, one of our most popular guests, because it really has to do with a huge part of our paychecks on real estate, Mitchell Rochelle joins us. He's with PwC, and it really focuses more than anybody I know, not only on the mix of real estate, but the mix across income levels. And Vinny, Mitch, brings it up there perfectly. There's like 3 markets out there. There's all the media frenzy over gazillionaire properties, and we can talk about the move to Florida and all that in a moment. But for the average guy out there, is Vinny mentioned, somebody's struggling, I need a second job, or I don't have a job. What's the real estate market for people in America that are struggling, that are just trying to get to the next paycheck?
I think their biggest problem is finding a house to buy. And if you look at the supply of existing homes on the market of less than 4 months supply, that's historically significantly low.
But these people aren't buying a house, are they? They're renting, right?
They're renting.
What's the rent dynamic right now?
Rents just keep going up. The supply and demand dynamic is we're not building enough new supply of housing. So, and there is very strong demand fueled by the strong economy, fueled by the labor market. So the fact of the matter is rents are going up because no one's adding new product.
Well, where are we in terms of the move to secondary and tertiary cities? Because that's been sort of the trend over the recovery. That basically,
it's on Lisa's mind.
It is on my mind. The idea that people are moving out of the New Yorks and the San Franciscos of the world, and they're going to the Cincinnatis of the world. Where are we in that evolution?
Lisa, I refer to it as a force of nature because it can't be stopped. People are moving out of traditionally Northeast states and cities and California as well, and moving to places that are south. In almost every case, it's a low tax or no tax environment. So it's a decision to have better take-home pay at the end of the day. It's not just retirees, it's people entering the workforce. Some kid from Scarsdale goes to UT Austin and decides to stay there.
Okay, so how significant is this? I mean, can you give us numbers showing how much?
It's very significant. So if you go back to 2010 and just look at the 8 years worth of data, because we don't have the 9th year yet, over 1 million people have moved to Florida or Texas, all at the expense of California and the Northeast.
What are they moving to? I mean, John, by the way, Scarsdale's a startup community north of New York. It's like, It's like where you slide.
You're going to offend the people of Scarsdale.
Yes, we say,
You're going to say good morning to them now.
Tom just got put in his corner.
Texas. Mitch Rochelle, when I look at what they move to, what are they moving to? I mean, I think of a given community, whether it's Miami or, you could name 6 other cities better than me. What are they moving into? Is it to go from rent to home? Is it to go home to home?
I think for the younger folks, it's for their first job, and then they stay, and they go from renting to ultimately buying. Statistically, they're buying in their early 30s. And for people who are retiring and looking to do something in retirement part-time, they're, interestingly enough, half of those folks are renting. So you sell your house in Brentwood and you move to Nevada, and half of those people opt to rent as opposed to buy.
One big theme for the housing industry has been related to immigration and some of the visa requirements. And this has been leading to people saying there's a shortage of workers to actually build the homes, which is one reason why you've seen house appreciation go up as much as it has. Where are we in that? I mean, are we seeing a pickup when it comes to developing places, more affordable homes?
Yeah, that's an important point. So I think that's 3 factors that are contributing to why we're not building enough new supply. One is labor, which you mentioned, and the other 2 are L's. One of them is lumber, and I use lumber as sort of a catch-all for all of the building materials. Thankfully, that number has come down a little bit. And the third piece is land. So land costs keep going up. So if you're a home builder, whether you're an entrepreneurial home builder and buying an existing home, tearing it down and building something new, the entry point for you for that initial raw material of land has gotten high. And if you can't find anybody affordable to build it, you're not going to build it.
Can we finish with a bit of a rant from me? And I'm apologizing ahead of it.
A rant?
In America, I always struggle to get my head around this. You can work your whole life, pay off your mortgage, retire, and still have to spend upwards of tens of thousands of dollars on property taxes every year. That makes no sense to me as someone who comes from the United Kingdom and does not face the same property taxes whatsoever. I don't get it.
Well, how do you pay for school and roads and everything else over in the UK?
Introduce a VAT or something. You should tax flow and not stock. That has always been my point. If you own an asset, why should you pay a tax on that every single year?
Are you trying to move the show to London?
But this raises an interesting question. I mean, okay, there is sort of this bigger question about the way you do it. Okay,
get charged the tax at the point of purchase.
All right.
Not once you own it, and not every year.
All right, moving away from the sort of bigger picture question, there isn't just a more simple question of whether these high tax states will lower the taxes, whether they will lower the property tax to entice people to actually come in.
And that's a great point, but the challenge there is if their population is shrinking, they have a double whammy, so they have less people paying taxes, and they're in a tough way.
I say good morning, Bloomberg 1130 in New York. Ben Potemkin emails in from Short Hills, New Jersey. His daughter's up at Radcliffe right now. His finances have changed, right? I mean, is Ben moving to Florida?
I don't know Ben particularly, but I think the fact of the matter is more and more people are moving to Florida. And I look at my age cohort, I am, inches from 60, and many of my contemporaries are buying places in Florida, buying places in Nevada, those who live on the West Coast.
Interesting.
And I never thought I would talk about buying a place in Florida in my 60s. I thought that would be something.
So what's our response? What's the response of the states besides trying to change the legislation Mr. Trump put in Washington? There has to be a high-tax state response, right?
And I think at the state level, because you have to look at all the layers of tax that exist in a state like New York, at the state level, they lower taxes. All they're going to do is shift burden to local government. If you look at the state of New York has an additional layer of government because they have county government, and there's, so.
And the roads are so good. All those taxes.
By the way,
you're fired up.
Yeah, I was about to say.
John, Lisa said, where does the money go for the roads? I mean, I'd love to know where the money goes.
When you drive on the other side of the road, John, the roads are a little different, though.
Oh, John, I'm serious. Which train do we want to be on if we move the show to London?
We want to be in West London, don't we?
We want to be in West London.
Yeah,
so we take the Red Line there, the Center
we'll take
line?
District and Circle into Cannon Street or Mansion House and go straight to the office.
Okay, not to break up this conversation, but I will just say there is a question, why don't these states, municipalities borrow money? Because it's really cheap to borrow money at this point in the muni debt market, which has been on fire. I'm just saying, but there is a question going forward, how much longer this divergence can continue? Because we have seen price declines even in certain places in New York and San Francisco, while we see the price, the price of entry-level homes skyrocket elsewhere. How long can this continue?
I think it's a can that gets kicked down the road, Lisa, for a while, to be honest with you. I don't think those high-tax states are acknowledging the mass migration out of those states. I think there's a big denial going on there.
When does that change? I mean, I understand it's linear. Every year there's more and more people, but I don't hear in any of the discussion the action plan to change the behavior.
I have yet to hear one either, and I think you'll find a wave of candidates coming out in the next, let's say, cycle at the state level that
at the state level
that are populists that are focusing on that issue.
Okay, go to Illinois. I mean, PwC's got a national view here, and Illinois's got its own challenges, in Chicago as well. They're going to Florida as well?
They're going to the west coast of Florida. Yes, they're going to Nashville. And they're going to Texas.
Okay, so what does Illinois, with all the challenges it has, we don't need to go into that right now. What is the prescription for Illinois to retain those people?
They have to find a way, first of all, to attract employers and get employers to want to be there.
Yeah.
Because the employers are actually, and the fact of the matter is, jobs chase people, not the other way around. So if all of the kids are moving to Texas, all the kids are moving to Nashville, companies that otherwise may have been in Illinois are going to move to those places.
So cue the do music. Are we going to see ghost towns in New York and San Francisco?
I don't think so, because I think that New York's different than San Francisco, but I do think that places that are gateways are always going to stay gateways. I do worry about cities like Chicago, and I'm sure I'm going to get hate mail my own, but I do worry about places like Chicago more than I worry about the New Yorks and San Franciscos.
And Mitch Rochelle, thank you so much to PwC.
Good to see you, Mitch.
An update there on a lot of things, and that was good, John. I mean, actually, we don't realize, John, the tax differentials in London.
I mean, you pay stamp duty up front on a property in London, and then you pay an annual council tax, but it's nothing like the property taxes that you guys face once you've purchased a home.
That's because of that, correct?
Yeah, we have a VAT tax.
Yeah.
Well, there is one presidential candidate talking about that.
Oh, really? Thank you. With that, we will move to our news in New York City. Here's Michael Barr.
Thank you very much, Tom. Thank you very much, Lisa and John. Vice President Mike Pence says President Trump had a duty to act in last week's U.S. killing of Iranian General Qasem Soleimani. Pence on ABC's Good Morning America says the Trump administration let Iran know they are prepared to defend U.S. military members in the region.
We're ready. We're making it very clear we're not going to tolerate violence. But thanks to the decisive action that President Trump took Qasem Soleimani off the battlefield, sent a very clear message.
Meanwhile, the Trump administration made its case for killing Soleimani before legislators on Capitol Hill. But Democrats and also some Republicans say the classified briefings were short on details and left them guessing about the president's next steps in the Mideast. South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham slammed his Senate GOP colleagues Mike Lee and Rand Paul, saying their stand against the president is a stand for Iran.
I think they're overreacting, quite frankly. Go debate all you want to. I'm going to debate you. Trust me.
Responding to popular demand, Facebook will soon give users the option to see fewer political and social issue advertisements in their feed. The new setting, which will also be available on Instagram, is part of an effort to give people more control over what they see ahead of the 2020 presidential election. And Buck Henry, the writer behind the big screen classics like The Graduate and a co-creator on TV's Get Smart, died last night of a heart attack. He was 89. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, John.
Michael Barr, thank you very much, sir. 45 minutes away from the opening bell in New York City. Equity futures grinding high by 11 points on the S&P. We are up by around about a third of 1%. In the bond market, the state of things for you as follows. Yields higher by a single basis point to 188 on a 10-year, up a basis point on a 2-year note. At the front end of the curve, 1.591% is your yield on 2-year notes. And in foreign exchange, sterling outperforming through the morning, underperforming rather, through the morning on a dovish Governor Carney speech. Cable down 0.4%. This is Bloomberg.
This is your Bloomberg Real Estate Report. I'm Denise Pellegrini. Some high-end real estate is getting hit pretty hard, especially in some metros.
We definitely do have cities like New York, you have Manhattan, where there has been large influx of new supply, and so there's too many high-end apartments on the market. You've had taxes and other government efforts in places like London or Vancouver to sort of cool off markets, to make it harder or more expensive for foreign buyers, and all of that has had a toll.
That's Patrick Clark, reporter for Bloomberg News, but he also says there will be some bright spots this year.
Particularly where there's been less new inventory coming onto the market. We have cities like Miami where the U.S. tax policy is kind of pushing wealthy home buyers to take up residence in Florida where they don't have to pay income tax, and so that could be a boon. That's a market where the supply-demand sort of balance is a little bit better for sellers.
And that's your Bloomberg Real Estate Report. I'm Denise Pellegrini.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Connecting to...
Here at Tesco, we're celebrating over 100 years of great value, with even more great prices that take you back. Like a 280-gram Tesco stone-baked pepperoni pizza, now half price from £3.50 to just £1.75. All this week at Tesco.
Selected largest stores, subject to availability. Offer ends 14th of January.
Puts his head down, crashes, and the snap is good. The hold is good. The kick is on its way. It is good!
Did you know all weekend long the NFL playoffs are on TuneIn?
In for the touchdown!
Search NFL to never miss a moment of the action.
The NBA is on TuneIn Premium.
Pointer by Anthony Davis. It's good!
Each week, TuneIn picks an NBA game you just can't miss. Two of the top teams in the Western Conference go head-to-head. This Sunday, the Clippers are at the Nuggets. Tip-off is at 8 p.m. Eastern.
Three ball on the way. He got it to go! Three from the angle. Got it!
Search NBA to follow your favorite NBA team today.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. U.S. futures advancing while stocks rose across Europe and Asia, extending a relief rally after the U.S. and Iran appear to step back from a deeper military conflict. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures up 11 points, Dow futures up 111, NASDAQ futures up 52, the DAX in Germany's up 1.25%. 10-year Treasury down 2/32, yield 1.88%, and the yield on the 2-year is at 1.59%. NYMEX crude oil down 0.1% or 6 cents at $59.56 a barrel. COMEX gold is down 0.5% or $8.50 at $15.5170 an ounce. The euro 1.1114 against the dollar, British pound 1.3055, and the yen at 109.44. Filings for U.S. unemployment benefits fell to a 5-week low, the latest indication that the labor market remains solid just ahead of the monthly payrolls report due tomorrow. Federal Reserve Vice Chairman Richard Clarida said U.S. monetary policy is in a good place amid solid growth, stable prices, and a strong labor market. Those comments included in his prepared remarks to the Council on Foreign Relations. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Bloomberg Opinion, informed perspectives, and expert data-driven commentary on breaking news.
Good morning. everyone. Lisa Abramowitz and Tom King from our world headquarters in New York, Lexington at 59th. And now, without question, the most important conversation today for America and, quite frankly, for our people, our officers, and our enlisted in our military. Joining us, James Stavridis, the former Admiral, Supreme Commander of NATO, and, of course, the McClarty. And he's been hugely visible in the media in the last number of days. Admiral Stavridis, thank you so much for joining us with your new book, Sailing True North. And I've really got to go to the zeitgeist of the moment, which is the gentleman from Utah who I've interviewed many times, the even-handed Michael Lee, Senator of Utah, really tearing apart the White House on the brief to Capitol Hill late yesterday on these matters in Iran and Iraq. Admiral, what actually goes on in those briefs?
Yeah, I feel for the military officers who had to go and do those briefings, and you could sense the palpable rage, I think is not too strong a word, from Senator Lee. Here, what you have, Tom, of course, is a collision between a desire on the part of the administration to closely control all that intelligence, and they're terrified that there'll be leaks and the sources will be revealed. And on the other side, the Congress clearly wants to do its job in oversight. So it's going to be a contested space.
Where does the Pentagon fit in? Do they report and do they do lockstep with what President Trump and the administration want, or is there an independence to the messaging of the Pentagon on these intelligence matters?
Let me give you a nuanced answer to that. Certainly, the Pentagon is always going to follow the direction of the civilian leadership, the Secretary of Defense, a political appointee, and, in fact, obviously, the President, the Commander-in-Chief. But, Tom, whenever I testified in front of Congress, particularly the Senate, Senator McCain would always say, you, senior military, have a responsibility to us, to the Congress, to always tell the truth brutally, the full truth. And so, yes, it will be following some level of political guidance, but you can be assured when a uniformed officer goes up to the Hill, he or she is going to lay out the whole truth and nothing but the truth.
So let's talk about the issue between Iran and U.S. Everybody's saying issue over, the tensions have been diffused, and yet here we have this Boeing jet that crashed near Tehran that was headed to Ukraine, basically in the back seat here, but people sort of saying it looks incredibly suspicious. There have been some allegations that it could be an errant missile. What do you make of that? How closely are U.S. military members watching that?
Very closely, and I think not only U.S. military members, but anybody commercially who is considering flying in and out of not only Iran, but frankly the broader Middle East right now, ought to take that into consideration. Look, there needs to be a full, thorough, transparent international investigation, and I think the black box will quickly tell us whether those pilots had a sudden catastrophic explosion, read a missile, or they had some kind of engine failure. There are engine failure scenarios that can result in explosion and fire as well. But you'll know from those black boxes. So I call on the Iranians to reveal those. The international aviation industry needs to know what happened here.
What does the U.S. do with those black boxes? Let's say they reveal that the jet was shot down. What does the U.S. do?
The U.S. will, along with the entire international community, will condemn Iran for the shoot down if that occurs. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. I think it would be irresponsible at this point to start a chain that leads to some kind of conspiracy theory. We all ought to be calling on Iran to reveal the contents of those black boxes. If there is malfeasance, it ought to be revealed in the same way that when the airliner was shot down over Ukraine by Russian and Ukrainian insurgents, there's been widespread condemnation of that. And by the way, we ought to own up to the fact that the United States of America, our Navy, shot down an Iranian jet in an accident in 1988 that had 290 civilians on it. These things happen. They're terrible. They need to be fully investigated and fully transparent, which the United States was in the incident I just mentioned.
Admiral, with your public service to the nation over the last number of days, your essay in Time Magazine, your essay for Bloomberg Opinion, and your many media appearances, I would like to review one moment, I believe it was on Friday, where you discussed the optionality of the Iranian Navy at the Gulf of Hormuz. Repeat that again quickly.
I can. As we all know, 30% of the world's oil flows through the Strait of Hormuz, coming out of the Arabian Gulf into the Indian Ocean. So it's highly trafficked. The Iranians have diesel submarines, very quiet, capable in shallow waters. They can swarm small craft that have surface-to-surface missiles on them, even against a larger destroyer, a Navy destroyer. That's a challenge. And they have cruise missiles, which can be launched from coastal regions against our ships. So the Iranians are very capable in that scenario. That's where another concern ought to be placed.
Very quickly, is their line officer military separate from the Revolutionary Guard and separate from the leaders of the Islamic Republic?
Yes, there is. And in general, they are very professional. When we see, if you will, cowboy antics at sea, runs against our ships, crazy things on the radio, threats, it comes from the Revolutionary Guards, who, let's face it, will be at a high state of emotion given the killing of their leader, General Soleimani.
James Trevitas, thank you so much. And again, the book, folks, can't say enough about it. Chapter to chapter on individual admirals. I'll go right, as he mentions, diesel submarines, to Rickover. The chapter alone on Admiral Rickover is worth the price of admission. Trevitas out with a new book as well. Lisa, that was something.
That was really an important perspective to understand whether we are or are not completely out of the woods here with some of this this tension that has been building for decades. Right now, we are looking at markets higher ahead of the open. We're looking at bond yields taking a little higher after that better than expected employment data. Stick with it. Bloomberg Radio. I'm Lisa Abramowitz with Tom Keene, Bloomberg Surveillance.
Sometimes in business, you have to take risks, but trading across borders and currencies shouldn't be one of them. With Western Union Business Solutions, we can help you manage the risk of doing business internationally. Our valuable experience, expert knowledge, and extensive global network makes us the ideal trusted partner for your business. And with our customer-focused support team, you'll receive a dedicated solution and personalized service. Visit westernunionbusiness.com. Western Union Business Solutions, a global financial network you can trust.
Imagine yourself in an unspoiled paradise, discovering the charms of a new city, or sampling street food with the locals. Fly from London to more than 160 destinations worldwide and make 2020 a year like never before with Qatar Airways, named world's best airline by Skytrax. Our incredible selection of special fares are available now. Book today at QatarAirways.com. Qatar Airways, going places. Together.
Here at Tesco, we're celebrating over 100 years of great value with even more great prices that take you back. Like a 500-gram tub of Anchor Salted Spreadable from £3.50 to just £2. All this week at Tesco.
Selected largest stores subject to availability. Offer ends 14th of January.
On the goal line, scores! It takes it home!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
Here's Pietrangelo, he scores!
And you can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium.
Move, and a shot, they score!
From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today. Are you curious what others are listening to on TuneIn? Head to the trending section under Browse to see the most popular stations and podcasts among TuneIn listeners right now. Check it out. You might just discover something new for yourself.
Pascal gobbles up the rebound and slams it down.
Catch your favorite NBA team right here on TuneIn.
A step back, deep three is up and in.
Search NBA on TuneIn and hear all the action. The NBA lives on TuneIn.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
We can't make traffic move faster during rush hour, but we can help you catch up on the news with TuneIn. With live around-the-clock news from MSNBC.
In the UK, they're significantly worse. When the president gets up to the podium...
CNBC and Fox News Talk.
The Fox News poll sizing up the race for 2020 found that each of the 5 top Democrats...
You can use your stop and go for good by staying in touch with the world. Search news to hear what's happening now. You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
First time.
We always talk about the losers in a trade war.
You benefit if you're just further away from China.
So that you can too.
What are the ramifications if she crumbles or doesn't crumble?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
I think the U.S. is going in for a couple of years of very, very strong growth.
The deficit by early in the next decade will start to become a real problem for the markets.
Finance.
The consumer is really strong right now.
We don't realize how good times are now.
Investment.
The biggest problem that people have in investing in stocks is that they get out of the market.
It's not supposed to be easy. Anyone who finds it easy is stupid.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Good Thursday morning from New York City to our worldwide audience from our Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studios. Alongside Tom Keene, I am Paul Sweeney. We have green on the screen. Once again, another melt-up day. S&P futures up 10. Dow futures up 100. It looks like the markets like the fact that there does not appear that there will be a rising tensions with Iran, and that's kind of what we're seeing across the risk assets right now. Again, green on the screen, futures higher. Let's get a sense of what's going on with the equity markets. We welcome Bloomberg Stocks editor Dave Wilson. Dave, what are you looking at this morning?
Well, I'll tell you, Paul, I mean, what we're seeing early on, stocks not getting any help from a whole lot of retailers. Let's put it that way. Kohl's shares are down 8.5%. The department store chain said fiscal year earnings will be at the low end of its forecast range. Kohl's also said holiday sales slid 0.2% at stores open more than a year. Analysts weren't looking for that. So you've got Nordstrom down 1.5%, and Macy's, whose holiday results came out yesterday and were viewed favorably by investors, also lower, just down 0.5%. JCPenney's off 2.5%. Comparable sales at the department store chain fell 5.3% over the holidays, and that decline omits two areas that Penny's exiting: major appliances and in-store furniture. You got L Brands down 1.5%. The owner of Victoria's Secret and Bath and Body Works cut its fiscal fourth quarter profit forecast. Holiday comparable store sales fell 3%.
When holiday sales overall were up about 4 or 5%, these department stores, these apparel-driven department stores, still having problems, aren't they?
Absolutely. And if you want to talk about problems, how about Bed Bath & Beyond? It's down almost 13%. The home furnishings retailer posted an unexpected loss for the fiscal third quarter. Comparable sales dropped 8.3%, more than analysts expected in a consensus metric survey. There is a bright spot, though, at least one in retailing, and that would be Costco wholesale, up 1.5%. The warehouse club chain's comparable sales for December rose 9%. The growth beat analysts' average estimate of 7.3%, so a plus there. Yep. You've also got a plus at Starbucks. It's up 1.5%. The coffee shop chain was raised the equivalent of buy from hold at Barclays. eBay, on the other hand, down 1.5%. The online marketplace was cut to the equivalent of sell from hold at Jefferies. The firm also reduced its 12-month share price estimate by 18% to $31. That's the lowest among 27 analysts in a Bloomberg survey. Jefferies cited an e-commerce survey it did that showed eBay is, quote, losing relevance for consumers.
Losing relevance for
consumers. Indeed. Okay. Advanced Micro Devices up 2.5%. The chip maker was raised to buy from neutral. Mitsuho, the firm cited potential growth in sales of server computers and AMD's prospects for gaining market share in the server business. And Snap's up 4%. The owner of the social media site Snapchat was raised to buy from hold at Jefferies and to the equivalent of buy from hold at Cowen. Yeah, it looks like social media stocks doing all right in early trading.
Look at this.
Twitter's up about 2%. Facebook's up 1%. So, some pluses there. One more for you.
We're looking at Snapchat just over the last 12 months, up 165%. Wow.
Yeah, absolutely. And more today.
All right.
And one more for you. Archer Daniels Midland down 1.5%. The grain processor was cut to sell from neutral at Maness Crespi Hart. At the same time, CEO Juan Luciano said in an interview with Bloomberg that ADM is in advanced talks for a possible sale or joint venture in the ethanol business.
Bloomberg Stocks editor Dave Wilson, thank you so much. Looking at the U.S. stock exchanges, it's really interesting. One of the businesses that they're in that doesn't get a lot of play is they actually sell their data to Wall Street brokers. It's a pretty lucrative business for them. And the SEC wants to perhaps crack down on some of that business or regulate that a little bit more tightly. To get some color, we welcome our good friend Arthur Levitt, former chairman of the Securities and Exchange Commission and a board member at Bloomberg LP. So, Arthur, what's the SEC doing as it relates to the big exchanges and their sale of their data?
Well, again, in this deregulatory environment that we find ourselves, the Commission seeks to crack down on what they view as the exchange's conflicts of interest, but not going far enough, according to the Democratic commissioners. And that plays out in a lot of regulations coming out of the Commission these days. They come out, but not as strong as the Democratic commissioners would have it. They oppose the plan, saying that it doesn't go far enough in rooting out conflicts of interest. They say that while exchanges would face new governance requirements, this process that the SEC put in place means that the exchanges will avoid a worst-case scenario of a sweeping agency rule that directly hits their lucrative private data feed business. The Commission proposal would require stock exchanges write a single plan for their consolidated data feeds.
Yeah. Are they getting paid to quote Anaconda Copper 43 3/8? Is that what this comes down to?
Not quite. The Commission, the exchanges now are using multiple plans, and this is an effort to get some sort of
yeah, but Arthur, what are they selling?
Information.
Okay, great. I'm selling information too, but
which helps investors make decisions.
So on a Bloomberg or
Bloomberg
a relative or Reuters, when Reuters or Bloomberg or Yahoo Finance quotes Anaconda Copper 43 3/8, somebody's getting paid for that data point?
Yes.
Absolutely, and that's
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Bloomberg's a huge customer of those, and we buy that data. Okay. But it's I'm not even sure where the conflict of interest lies, Arthur. I mean, it's their data; they own it, is my understanding. Can't they charge whatever they want for it?
Well, they can, but the argument is that since the exchanges make money from selling faster and better private data feeds, they then don't have the incentives to release a consolidated data feed that's available to all market participants. So that in turn forces them to pay up for the private feeds, which I guess are key to the plumbing of the U.S. stock market.
All I know is when I hit go on my Bloomberg terminal, the data pops up right then and everything I need, and I'm assuming that Bloomberg pays for that, and Reuters pays for that, and Yahoo pays for that. So
that's true, they do.
Yep.
Arthur, we got 30 seconds left. Give us your football view for the weekend. It's all I care about. Damian Sassauer's killing it with a fantasy football.
Well, I want to know, does Arthur like the new coach of the Giants?
Oh, excuse me, yes.
Yes, I do like the new coach for the Giants because he has a background of toughness, and I think the released coach was too amiable to pull this group of newcomers together. So I do like the new coach very much.
Arthur Levitt, thank you so much. Former chairman of the Securities Exchange Commission and, of course, Bloomberg LP board member. Paul, I've been dying to go to you on this. We're not going to do buy, hold, sell on Apple. Boring. It pops $300 a share. Everybody said they were going to die X number of months, quarters ago. And they came out, I believe, and maybe wrapped around CES in Las Vegas, and they said all those onesies and twosie dollars everybody's giving them, am I right?
Yep.
They add up.
They do. I'm just looking at the Bloomberg terminal now, and over the trailing 12 months, this stock has literally doubled, up 100%. And that took me by surprise. I mean, I think the concern or the issue about Apple was, can they pivot from being a phone company, which has been a great business and has driven their business for the last 15, 20 years, to a services business? That's a big unknown. It's a big pivot for the company. Do you want to own the stock while they try to make that transition? But in the interim, they put out the iPhone 11. I have it. You have it. Everybody has it. It wasn't a big series upgrade.
Excuse us. Let's go to John Tucker right now. Have you traded in the flip phone that Michael Douglas used in that movie?
About reliability here. You can drop it off a building. It still works. All right.
So, the phone was good. The AirPods, things in your ear.
Can I ask you a quick, stupid question?
Yes.
With the advent of 5G or switching to 5G, do I have to get a new phone?
Yes, you will. And that's going to be, according to Dan Ives of Wedbush Securities, who we've had on here, that is going to be a huge driver of a refresh cycle.
I saw an article like in the last 24 hours that 5G is a non-event at CES. I don't know if it's true or not.
It's interesting. I heard the kind of same thing. 5G was CES last year, is what John Butler was telling me. And it's still there this year, but last year was, this is what 5G is, and this is what's going to happen. Now it's kind of now people are actually starting to build out their systems, and the phones are starting to come. So it's almost a little bit passe.
Since Tucker's teeing up the dumb questions, can I weigh in here with a dumb question?
I've got 1G, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. You got half G. If they do 5G, do the phones that we have now still work?
Yes. But I don't believe, and this is according to John Butler from Bloomberg Intelligence, that they're not going to have the functionality that'll take advantage of 5G, for example. So you're going to have your phone to work fine, but it won't be able to reap the benefits of 5G per se. So if you want to reap the benefits, say, I want to download Crown because you're trying to figure out what's going on with the Crown, the latest season, you're going to want the 5G phone.
John, you bought your Nokia there. You bought it when RC Crown Cola was dominant, right?
No, it's truthfully, it's something called, it's a BlackBerry ripoff. It's called a Pantech.
Oh.
Basically,
you got it on 14th Street.
No, those AARP commercials,
That's great. John Tucker there, our phone analyst here, telecom analyst here at Surveillance. Right now with the news in New York City, here's Michael Barr.
Paul, thank you very much. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says members will vote today on a resolution to limit President Trump's options for military action against Iraq. The War Powers resolution would require the president to cease military actions against Iran unless authorized by Congress or in response to an imminent threat. Vice President Mike Pence says President Trump had a duty to act in the killing of Iranian General Qasem Soleimani. On ABC's Good Morning America today, Pence answered the president's critics on Capitol Hill.
Those of us who have seen all the evidence know that there is a compelling case of an imminent threat against American personnel, and President Trump was right to act to take the world's most dangerous terrorists off the battlefield.
The crash of a Ukrainian jetliner that killed 176 people in Iran has touched off mourning in both Ukraine and Canada, where many of the victims were from or were headed. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is vowing his government will get answers about the crash.
A Ukrainian Airlines plane just landed in Toronto from Kiev. According to the airline, there were 138 passengers who weren't on that flight because they died in the crash on the earlier leg of their travel.
The Boeing 737 went down on the outskirts of Tehran during takeoff just hours after Iran launched a barrage of missiles at U.S. forces. Republican Senator Marco Rubio and Democratic Representative Jim McGovern are seeking to press China on human rights, and they're trying to restart work on stalled legislation that would sanction Chinese officials for their treatment of Uyghur Muslims in the western part of the country. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Tom.
Michael Barr, thanks so much. Let me do a melt-up data check. 2 days in a row, up. Futures up 11, up 12 earlier, but a nice lift here in the last hour off single-digit levels. Dow futures up 106. Am I on the 29,000 watch? Yes. 28,876 on Dow futures. Now the VIX comes in not to a 12 level, but 13.02. Yields up fractionally, higher yields by a basis point. That yen we pay attention to. Dollar yen 109.47. This is
Rich is just a really good guy. The term good egg isn't enough to describe him. He's also certified organic and free range. Rich puts the cap back on everything. The toothpaste, the olive oil, the shampoo, everything. He lets his 10-year-old nephew beat him at virtual tennis, even though he can straight up slay his 10-year-old nephew in virtual tennis. When the toilet paper is running low, Rich replaces the roll on the actual holder, not just on the back of the toilet. Rich is texting and driving. Rich? No. What are you doing, Rich? I was just telling everyone how great you are. Texting and driving makes good people look bad. Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know, with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President and Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize-change.
Influential conversations from Bloomberg Television. Here's Tom McKenzie.
Former Nissan chairman Carlos Ghosn speaking in Beirut after his dramatic escape from Tokyo. Let's have some reaction to that now. Sophia University law professor Stephen Givens joins us from Tokyo. What did you make of Ghosn's press conference, his performance? Was he convincing?
In many ways, I think it was a masterful performance. And he very convincingly made the case, first of all, that the initial charges brought against him were weak, flimsy. He also made a convincing case that this was part of a palace coup that was trying to scuttle his plans to merge Nissan and Renault. And he also, I think, was very convincing about the Japanese criminal justice system, that he and other criminal suspects here undergo procedures that are cruel and not in keeping with international standards.
We're clearly a long way from any resolution between the two sides on this. How potentially damaging is this to Japan Inc.?
I think it's very damaging. He said that there's been $10 billion wiped off the market cap of Nissan, which is true. Overall, I think that the damage both to Nissan, to Renault and Japan has been quite serious.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings. 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. U.S. stock index futures advancing while stocks rise across Europe and Asia, extending a relief rally after the U.S. and Iran appear to step back from a deeper military conflict. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures are up 9.5 points. Dow futures up 96. NASDAQ futures up 48. The DAX in Germany is up 1.2%. 10-year Treasury down 4/30 seconds. Yield 1.88%. The yield on the 2-year 1.59%. NYMEX crude oil is down 0.3% or 15 cents at $59.45 a barrel. COMEX gold is down 0.5% or $7.30 at $15.52.90 an ounce. The euro 1.1105 against the dollar. British pound 1.3046 and the yen at 109.48. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Paul.
Here we are. We are waiting. One of the news items here, Tom, that is just grabbing, I think, attention for everyone is the royal couple. I guess the Duke and Duchess of Sussex are wanting to step back, Tom.
I'm not read in on this. Excuse me.
No, so this is big. And I have to admit, 90% of what I know about the royal family, I've learned through watching The Crown. But I think that makes me pretty...
The only way you can be expert on the royal family is to read Robert Lacey cover to cover or work at Harvard Business Review.
All right, I know somebody who's done that. Sarah Green Carmichael, Bloomberg Opinion Editor, joins us here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker studio to help us shed some light on what is going on in Buckingham Palace. Sarah, give us a sense of what we learned yesterday.
Yes. So yesterday was a busy day. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex, Harry and Meghan, announced that they would be stepping back from their status as senior royals. And then an hour later, the palace issued a statement saying, wait, hold on, not so fast. So it sounds like we're not really sure what's happening now.
I want to cut to the chase, and this is Mark Landis in the New York Times this morning with, I thought, a really in-depth report. Who will pay for their security? That seems to be buried in 45 paragraphs. That was a single sentence of the emotion within the United Kingdom, including, I might point out, John Farrell really upset about this morning.
I'm sure.
Who will pay for their security, just to begin with?
Yeah, this actually gets to what's interesting here, I think, is that this is a big business, the royal family. It brings in a lot of revenue to the UK.
Otherwise known as the firm. Right?
Yes, otherwise called the firm by royal insiders. And usually the taxpayer does pay for their security. Now, there's some wiggle room there because the Queen herself is so wealthy from the lands that she owns.
And Prince Charles is the Duchy of whatever. So he's Cornwall. He's got, he's got his money coming in. I mean, okay, who will pay for the securities? They want to part back. The royal family was caught blindsided by this. What is the best outcome for the Sussexes?
Honestly,
it's not to be Edward and Wallace, right?
They're trying to have their cake and eat it too. Initially, this seemed like it was a clean spin-off, clean break, but it becomes clear now that they're more like two employees who are saying, we don't want to work on that project anymore. We'll just take the salary and work on what we want.
He's sixth in line to the throne. He wakes up every day with like 8 houses, whatever the story is. Don't tell me it's business as usual. What is the best outcome for Henry of Windsor?
A clean break, I think, would be the best outcome. A true clean
like Wallace and Edward.
Yeah, but I think that would be better.
I guess my question is, can they even do that? Isn't it kind of like the bad analogy, and I apologize in advance, kind of the mafia? You can't get out, per se. I mean, is there a precedent for this happening in the past where you can kind of be, I guess, stepping back, I guess?
Yeah, in any family business, right, you can try to quit the business, but you can't quit your family.
Okay. All right, so now what I found...
Sarah's watched Succession.
Yes, exactly. Now, what I found fascinating was, what we heard from, the Dutch and Duke of Sussex, but also the mother, the Queen Mother, comes out quickly afterwards, and it was clear that they didn't really... That I guess the Queen wasn't really aware of this, or approved it at least.
They had been talking about this, as with any spinoff, you have negotiations, but it's clear that the Duke and Duchess have jumped the gun.
What is the best outcome for his brother William and the Duchess of Cambridge and Boy George? What's their best outcome?
I think the best outcome for everyone would be an actual clean break where, Harry and Meghan are...
Okay, and then they figure out financial terms with King Charles to be on the passing of the Queen, and I mean they would have money from the royal family and not from the taxpayer.
Yes, I think the point is usually what happens, I think, with the royal family is that they have all this income, they turn it over to the government, and the government gives some back to help run the business of the royal family.
Can I suggest Netflix is the biggest winner because The Crown gets extended to season 7, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So what's I read in some of the reporting that Prince Charles has been looking to actually streamline, I guess, kind of the royal family a little bit.
Doing it here.
And is this perhaps part of that? Because I guess, maybe because I know there is some movement within the UK, people saying, I'm not so sure I'm as supportive as I have been of the royal family.
Yes, I think from a brand management perspective, this has all gone terribly. But from a long-term strategic perspective, it's gone quite well. I mean, this seems sort of inevitable that there will be a modernized, slimmed-down monarchy where you're not supporting everybody's cousins and aunts and uncles. You're just focused on the monarch and their direct heirs. It seems like in a modern world where you do have Republicans, small R Republicans who want to abolish the monarchy, that's the way it's going.
Is there any sense of timing when this is unprecedented, it feels like to me, so we don't really have a sense of when they can kind of clean this up or we'll get some resolution?
No, we have no idea, and it seems the palace has no idea either.
Wow.
I've got like an hour more questions.
Yeah.
I mean, we could go on, forever.
I mean, it kind of makes our situation look pretty clean.
Just to review here, they had a bang-up wedding in May of 2018. When did this dissatisfaction begin? Was it before that? And they were just smiling for the camera? And when did this trauma and tension click in?
I think it really began before that. A lot of the coverage...
Before the wedding?
Yes. A lot of the early coverage of Meghan Markle was really negative, and some of it was actually pretty racist. And Harry really didn't like that and called the press out on that. So I think that's when it started.
And seriously, Sarah, you're a serious journalist. I don't mean to make fun of it, but are people going to blame Henry or blame the Duchess of Sussex or blame what? I mean, is there a blame game going around in the United Kingdom on this?
Totally. I mean, the thing is, people really like to read negative stories about them. They like to read positive stories about it. It sells tabloids. Yeah. It generates clicks. So I think this is really an attempt by them to take control of their own brand, and I just don't know that it's going to end that well for them.
This is like the Red Sox in 1986, right? They took control of their own brand. If I said enough.
Well, being from Boston, I am a Red Sox fan, so watch out there.
She can come back.
She can come back. That's very good, Sarah. Thank you.
Thank you
so much.
Sarah Green Carmichael, Bloomberg Opinion columnist. Thank you.
Are you going to see John Farrow now?
Yeah, he's heartbroken. He's crestfallen. He doesn't know. I mean, it's bad enough that his soccer team.
And Francine was the same way today. It's treated totally differently here from the seriousness of it, the history of it, the fabric of it in the United Kingdom.
Yeah, you made the comparison to the Wallaces, who I will argue were the two most useless people on earth.
Oh, you editorialize.
This younger generation of the royal family, very focused
you sound like
giving
Mrs.
back.
Keys
giving back. See, there's a royal watcher right here. John Tucker. Who knew?
Biscuits glued to the crowd.
Very good. We got S&P futures up. We got green up on the screen today. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Why is delivering the best client experience a top priority at BNY Mellon's Pershing? Michelle Feinstein, Director of Client Engagement, explains.
Today's investors want a financial relationship that's on demand, customized, and leverages the latest digital technology. At BNY Mellon's Pershing, helping advisory firms and broker-dealers create great experiences for their clients is our priority. Through our integrated wealth experience, we give you a high-touch service, flexible technology choices, and expert insights, so you can deliver a highly personalized experience to your clients at every step, from onboarding to wealth planning, to performance analysis and more. And because we're part of BNY Mellon, you'll benefit from more than 230 years of strength and stability. At Pershing, we're personally invested in your success.
Visit Pershing.com to learn more about Pershing's integrated wealth experience. Pershing LLC and Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC are both members of FINRA and SIPC. This is a Blue.
Why book with Sunhat Villas? Take over 200 sea view spots, over 350 places at the heart of the destination, over 400 villas just a short walk to the beach, and even more countryside retreats. Add in 1 to 10 bedroom options, 19 years of experience, and 5-star reviews. And you'll find countless reasons to make Sunhat your number one. Search Sunhat Villas, apt to protected.
This is not a cat. This is not a rocket. And this is not a sale. That's right. At Smarty Mobile, we're not having a sale. While others are slashing prices, we're introducing our best ever new plans. Take our new 30 gig data SIM for just £10 a month. With unlimited calls and texts and no speed restrictions, credit checks or contract tying you down, why shop around? New plans, great value. Now that's Smarty. Grab yours today. Search Smarty Mobile. See smarty.co.uk for terms.
How can it be fair that millions of people in the world are denied access to clean water? At WaterAid, we need your help to create an equal world. Whether you're from Morden or Madagascar, everyone, everywhere should have access to clean water. Because clean water changes lives. You can help WaterAid change the picture. To find out how, search WaterAid Radio now.
Martin here loves being his own boss, but staying on top of all the tax rules used to drive him up the stud wall. This 31st of January self-assessment deadline, however, Martin won't be hitting the roof. Just a few buttons. He's using QuickBooks Self-Employed to make sure his tax bill is all above board. It tracks income and expenses, so he always knows what he owes. You could say he smashed it.
Visit quickbooks.co.uk for details. Intuit QuickBooks.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
And good morning. I'm Karen Moscow along with Tom Keene and Paul Sweeney. And the opening bell is brought to you by SEI. Asset managers don't get results that are off the charts when their solutions are off the shelf. Learn how SEI's operating platform can turn infrastructure into a competitive advantage at SEIC.com/IMS. The S&P 500 higher at the open, up 0.5% or 15 points at 3268. The Dow Jones Industrial Average up 0.4% or 124 points at 28,871. And the Nasdaq up 0.8% or 75 points at 92.05. 10-year Treasury down 4/32, yield 1.88%. The yield on the 2-year 1.59%. NYMEX crude oil is down 0.1% or 9 cents at 59.52 a barrel. COMEX gold down 0.6% or $8.70 at 15.51.70 an ounce. The euro 1.1105 against the dollar. The yen 109.51. Tom and Paul.
Karen, thanks so much. Paul Sweeney and Tom King getting the market open. Paul, I sort of expected this, but we have popped above futures on this opening.
Yeah, we really have, Tom, and it just it shows the resiliency of this market here. We certainly had some downward pressure on risk assets over the last couple of days, but man, snapping right back.
We're going to do a little theory here, folks, because it's Theory Thursday. Like that? I think it has a ring to it. The expected rate equals the risk-free rate plus, there's a Greek letter, beta. And then you do a compare and contrast of a past expected rate minus that risk-free rate. Greg Bowdle weighs in with BNP Paribas as we go back to CFA 1. Greg, does anybody know where the risk-free rate is right now?
Good morning, Tom, and Happy New Year. I think in terms of the risk-free rate, people obviously just look to the bond markets for the guidance there. But I think it's certainly the start of this year. People are looking at valuations, looking at different metrics, and certainly for the equity world, those valuations look stretched.
Yeah, but if we don't know where the risk-free rate is, we have to have an underlying belief. What is the BNP Paribas belief as you say, should I hold something? Should I take cash and deploy it, or you say sell and go to cash? What's the framework you're using?
Well, we think certainly when we look at equity markets that we'll get a better opportunity to buy into what may be a second half rally this year. So when we look at Q1 this year, there's a huge number of catalysts coming up. We have earnings season, which kicks off next week. So we have 3 big weeks of earnings releases for corporates. We then have the Democratic primaries, which kick off with Iowa and New Hampshire at the start of February, Super Tuesday at the start of March. And we think the macro data through the first quarter could also disappoint. There's a huge number of potential stumbling blocks for the first quarter.
But Greg, I'm reading your very fine research here. Right up front, you say, in Q1, if you see any weakness out there, go buy it. And boy, were you correct here just over the last several days. Is that how I should be thinking about the market here for 2012? Buy on the weakness?
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, certainly the geopolitical news flow tends to be one that the market has recovered from right the way through last year very quickly. So I think when we see things like some of the turmoil in the Middle East, it's very difficult for that to have a sustained impact in terms of U.S. corporate earnings and therefore the market, unless you really reach a tipping point in terms of unrest. So I certainly think that we will be in an environment where we will get these pockets of volatility, and I think it's going to provide some opportunities to buy tactically.
This is a general statement. Can I state we're at the record highs? We've become so benumbed to it. We're not seeing the red sticky across the Bloomberg, but 28,909. I mean, by the time we're done with Bowdle, we're going to print 29,000.
Exactly. I mean, it's just, and Tom, the way this market came back. Greg, does that surprise you at all? Kind of given the move down we had, the move up in oil, for example, the move down in equity and risk assets, but just snapping back here in the past couple of days. What does that tell you about the market as we think about 2020?
I'm Karen Moscow from the Bloomberg.
Well, I think that for equities, it's going to be much more the data that's going to drive the market rather than geopolitics. So what we've seen this week is a lot of headline risk. But if you look at the data, we have the non-manufacturing ISM, the ADP number, both of those numbers were much better. So I think looking forward over the next couple of weeks, it's going to be a bottom-up focus. If earnings reports are better, then I think that's likely to drive the market higher, even if valuations are looking slightly dislocated and too elevated.
How are you thinking about volatility here in 2020, given that big move up we had in the markets in 2019? Are you suggesting that need to be a little bit more hedged here as we move along the year?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's the first quarter where we see the most risk of volatility. In presidential election years, what you don't typically see is more volatility than other years, but you do see seasonality of volatility. So when we go back and look at all the previous election cycles, you tend to get volatility around the election date itself, but you also tend to get a lot of volatility around the primaries.
I'm thrilled to bring you Greg Bowdle within this great bull market. He's with BNP Paribas, looking at derivative and the dynamics of the equity markets. We see that one up 160. 28,903, 28,903 on the Dow, 3271. I'm not on 3,300 watch yet on SPX, but we're getting there, up 19 points. VIX confirms in 13.01 with a 12 handle here, consistently on safe haven. Yen 109.50 is a weaker yen. That confirms, and gold confirms off that 1,600 surge back to 15.51, down $9. I'll get it. 321 down $9 in the recent hours. Greg, what is the breadth of this market? I mean, and we're saying it's a bull market, wall of worry, all the cliches trot out. But what is the actual breadth that we're seeing in this leg up through December?
Well, I think that one of the things we've seen in terms of breadth is there have been some notable laggards. I mean, the energy names have certainly stuck out last year as one of the sectors that has underperformed massively. So I think if the market does continue to squeeze higher, what we could see is some catch up from any of those sectors that have underperformed. Small and mid caps have underperformed. The energy names have underperformed. I think some of the sectors more linked to the manufacturing side of the economy that again have underperformed could catch up. So I think if the market squeezes higher, we could get it very much an everything rally in terms of sectors, apart from some of those pretty expensive defensives, utilities, staples, which do look very richly valued.
And Paul Sweeney, you should mention good morning to Carl Icahn. I know he's interested in Anadarko, Occidental Petroleum, Oxy off the December lows. That's called a 20% up move, Paul. Yeah. Talk about dog of 2019.
Exactly.
Really getting a nice pop.
So, Greg, we've seen some stabilization in some of the economic data coming out of Europe. I'm wondering if this is an opportunity to take a look at a part of the world that has kind of been undervalued vis-a-vis the U.S. market. How are you thinking about Europe these days?
Yeah, I think if we have an environment where U.S. growth is slowing slightly but recessionary risks are avoided, we could get a little bit more of a recoupling generally. U.S. markets have obviously massively outperformed other geographies in recent years. So I think in a constructive environment for equities, Europe, potentially emerging markets, could potentially see a little bit more upside and some rotation out of U.S. markets. So I think Europe's probably well-placed relative to the U.S. to outperform in a constructive environment.
Let's complete our trip around the globe. Asia, kind of low volatility. I'm just kind of wondering what you're thinking about there. Is there enough growth in Asia now that trade tensions may be kind of moderating a little bit?
Yeah, I think so, potentially. Obviously, we've seen the data in China slowing, but I think this more benign backdrop in terms of trade, again, gives this environment where, particularly if we see a kind of more accommodative monetary policy backdrop globally, this could provide a kind of, again, a more constructive environment for Asian assets.
What do you do with the higher multiple assets, things that are moved out, price to sales rich, price to cash flow rich? We've all done the analysis. We'll all read Barron's on Saturday and figure it out. But what do you actually do if you own these things?
I think you have to be very nimble. I mean, the problem is equities look extremely expensive. When you look at growth stocks, for example, you have to go back to the dot-com bubble to find valuations, forward Ps for growth stocks that are this expensive. The issue is that they could get more expensive. There's no upper bound to Ps. So I think you have to be very nimble and very mindful that these things could squeeze higher. But once we do get a correction, when we do get some negative downgrades or some political risk, these things could whip back very quickly.
Greg, thank you so much. Nice update there with the market lift. Greg Bottle, BNP Paribas. Dow up 150, 28,895. With our news in New York City, here's Michael Barr.
Paul, Tom, Vice President Mike Pence says President Trump was right to act in taking out Iranian General Qasem Soleimani. Pence on ABC's Good Morning America says the president's actions are keeping U.S. service members safe.
We have been reminded this week of the danger that Iran poses, not just to American forces, but to the Iraqi people.
Meanwhile, the House will vote today on a resolution to limit President Trump's options for military actions against Iran. U.S. intelligence officials say there is no immediate evidence a Ukrainian International Airlines jet was shot down by Iran. The jetliner went down on the outskirts of Tehran during takeoff just hours after Iran launched a barrage of missiles at U.S. forces. While the timing of the disaster led some aviation experts to wonder whether it was brought down by a missile, Iranian officials have disputed any such suggestion and blame mechanical trouble. A rabbi whose home was the site of a stabbing attack in suburban New York is thanking state and local officials who reached out to the Orthodox Jewish community. Rabbi Chaim Rottenberg says the community is holding strong after the assault on the seventh night of Hanukkah, but more work toward unity must be done.
When the forces of hatred strike, we must counter with the power of love, goodness towards all humanity. When darkness hits, let the forces of light prevail.
A knife-wielding man stormed into the home and stabbed 5 people in an ambush. The New York governor called an act of domestic terrorism. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on quick take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Paul, Tom?
Michael Barr, thanks so much. As we talked to Greg Bottle, BNP Paribas, it's a good time to revisit what you do on January 1 when you model dividend growth and share buyback. And to me, Paul, what's not in the great analysis I've seen the last 5, 6, 7 days is the tax treatment. Don't I want a share buyback because then I don't affect a taxable event?
Yeah, that's what a lot of investors want. That's what a lot of institutional investors certainly want. And then I think when they sit down with the corporations that they're invested in and they think about, gee, tell us about your capital allocation. How do you think about returning capital to shareholders? Most corporations, they have some mix between dividend and capital returns through buybacks, depending upon their shareholder base. But institutional investors typically prefer, the buyback. It's more tax efficient.
Why do I want to affect a taxable event with a dividend payment to it?
Well, if you're an individual and you rely on dividend income, and if depending upon the company or if you're utility and you have your shareholder base has a larger component of retail versus
institutional. It's like Tucker. I mean, come on. Biscuit sells 100 shares if you need some cash, right?
And then takes the capital gain, which is better.
Bring Biscuit into this.
So yeah, it's interesting, but a lot of companies, particularly the ones that are throwing off tremendous amounts of cash. You think about the tech companies, and they tend to buy back stock more than to give dividends because I think the signal of putting on a dividend or increasing your dividends suggests that we're not really a growth company anymore. We don't have businesses to reinvest our money.
It's a signal thing. It's a signal. Martin Adams mentioned this.
It's a signal thing. So you'll see, depending upon the sector, the companies, different types of policies. Whereas utilities or consumer products companies they'll have a much higher dividend yield than say tech companies.
Is Apple hit 400 yet?
Yeah, exactly. Well, there's a company, Tom.
They don't want a dividend because that's not hit.
Yeah, so they're buying back stock like crazy. They have $100 billion of net cash, net of all their debt, on their balance sheet, and they'll have $60 billion of free cash flow this year, next year, the year after, and there's not a lot of stuff to buy, and so they're returning cash to shareholders.
Yeah, well, let me do a data check here into all this enthusiasm, and for those of you like me in the triple leveraged, all cash, low beta fund, the Dow up 134. What are we moving out? I mean, Volmer Moving just moved in. Are they trying to tell me something like,
They're selling the furniture from underneath.
They're selling out the furniture? Is this that bad, huh? Do you need my headphones as well? Dow up 130 points, SPX up 16, VIX 13.02. Yes, Disraeli gears. It was out like 10, 12 years ago. This is Bloomberg.
This is Bloomberg Pursuit's look at luxury. At the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas, Mercedes-Benz unveiled a cyborg concept car inspired by the Hollywood blockbuster Avatar. The Mercedes-Benz AVTR is an electric-powered car that features a fully recyclable battery, lateral crab-like movement, and no steering wheel. Instead, a biometric control function allows, quote, human and machine to merge as the car monitors the driver's breathing patterns. It's unclear whether the new Mercedes concept will make an appearance in the long-awaited Avatar sequel, which has been pushed back to December of 2021. And that delay is one reason movie theaters are facing a rough outlook for this year, as 2020 slate of films is lacking mega hits. Only No Time to Die, the latest entry in the James Bond franchise, and Wonder Woman 1984 may match the power of films in 2019 when 4 titles made more than $400 million each. I'm Andrew O'Day, Bloomberg Radio.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Do you go on the same holiday every year? To the same country, in the same hotel, with the same sea view, visit the same ancient monuments, lay by the same dolphin-shaped pool, meet the same Barrys and Sandras, and wear the same Hawaiian shirt that you'd never wear at home? Then maybe it's time to switch it up, starting with the all-new Vauxhall Corsa, with its bold styling and up to 70 miles per gallon. To switch it up, visit your local Vauxhall dealership or search New Corsa. Official WLTP test figures for comparison purposes only. Real-world figures may vary.
You might already know that TuneIn allows you to listen to all the pro sports leagues wherever you go. But did you know TuneIn is also home to the wide world of college sports?
Open three, DeAndre Hunter got it! Handoff Carruthers, big hole right side. He leaps and he surges in, touchdown!
From live college football, basketball, and baseball games to podcasts and coaches shows fueling your love for the game in your school. And the best part is, it's all free. Search college sports to find your team or league.
We can't make traffic move faster during rush hour. But we can help you catch up on the news with TuneIn. With live around-the-clock news from MSNBC.
In the UK, they're significantly worse. When the president gets up to the podium...
CNBC and Fox News Talk,
The Fox News poll sizing up the race for 2020 found that each of the 5 top Democrats...
You can use your stop and go for good by staying in touch with the world. Search news to hear what's happening now.
Lines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. U.S. stocks rising, treasuries falling as investor appetite for risk returned after the U.S. and Iran stepped back from the brink of war. The S&P 500 trading at a record. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. The S&P is up 0.4% or 12 points. It's at 3265. The Dow Jones Industrial Average up 0.4% or 108 points to 28,856. And the Nasdaq's up 0.7% or 63 points at 9192. 10-year Treasury down 5/32, yield 1.89%. The yield on the 2-year 1.59%. NYMEX crude oil down 0.6% or 37 cents at 59.24 a barrel. COMEX gold down 0.6% or $8.80 at 15.51.50 an ounce. The euro 1.1109 against the dollar. The yen 109.47. Confidence among Americans surged to the best level since October 2000 on brighter views of the economy and finances, adding to signs that consumers will continue to underpin a record-long expansion. Bloomberg's index of consumer comfort rose 1.2 points to 65.1 in the week that ended January 5th. Alphabet shares up 1.3% following a flurry of positive analyst commentary on the Google parent's 2020 prospects. At least 3 firms raised their price target on the stock, while KeyBank Capital Markets named it one of its key ideas in the internet sector this year. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Paul.
Karen, thanks so much. Good morning, 960 the Bay Area. San Francisco dropped down a little south. Think, West Disney Way, Anaheim, 92802. Paul, you and I, for a really modest amount of money, get an adult pilot at Flight Deck to run us through a flight simulator.
That'd be fun.
And you can actually go in and you pony up the 120 minutes, $398 package. And on 128 minutes, basically, you can fly your own 737 from LGA to DCA and really experience that turn before the White House where your stomach turns over.
I think a surveillance field trip's in order.
It says so. Flight simulator is the way to go. Bring in our next guest on flight simulators.
Brooke Sutherland, Bloomberg opinion columnist, covers all things industrials, but right now she's focused on Boeing. Brooke, the 737 MAX is still not in the air. What's the latest in terms of trying to get it back in the air?
So the latest is that Boeing has come out and recommended that pilots undergo flight simulator training. Now, this is a significant shift from Boeing's previous stance. A key reason why we're even talking about the 737 MAX is that Boeing did not want to have pilots go through simulator training. That was a key selling point for the plane. That was key to Boeing's efforts to catch up to Airbus's A320 program. So for them to be pivoting at this point signals to me that the gravity of this crisis is finally sinking in for them and that they're starting to realize the extent of the financial penalty. There's reports from the New York Times and others that they made this decision after pilots from United Airlines, American Southwest, and Aeromexico were in simulators testing out that new software, and they did not follow expected emergency checklists, that they were able to avoid crashes of the airplane, but they did not follow proper procedures. So that just reinforces the idea that this is a fundamentally different plane and that pilots need to be properly informed and trained on its features.
So that's a big change. And so my guess would be that would delay, if I have to get every pilot, to go through the simulator, this is going to push back when this thing can get in the air. So now what are we talking about?
So a key thing to note is that there are only 34 simulators currently certified for the MAX by some estimates. So there's a logistical challenge in just getting all the pilots to actually sit in a simulator. So you're right. This is certainly going to be a delay for the return to service of the MAX. And it's also going to be an expense because simulators are expensive to buy. And it's expensive for the airlines to pull the pilots out of their normal work to sit in one of these.
And to my point on Flight Deck out in Anaheim with 120 minutes, $398. These are adults and they're dead serious. How long do they simulate for before they feel confidence in flying the new 737 MAX.
So that part is not clear yet. We don't know exactly what all this will entail, if they'll have to go through the same degree of training as they would if it's an entirely new airplane, if it'll be supplemental. That part we don't know. And Boeing is also, I should note, exploring retrofitting simulators for older 737 models, but it's not clear yet whether or not they can do that.
You have been brilliant on this. You've had a journalistic skepticism of the Boeing story from day one. Are you less skeptical now?
I'm not, because I have a very hard time giving Boeing a lot of credit for this, seeing as it's more than a year after the first MAX crash. And given everything that's taken place and all of the delays and the public upbraiding by the FAA, just a month ago? I mean, I find it hard to believe that this is a company that has truly turned over a new leaf. I think what we learned from the MAX crisis is that there was a culture of arrogance and superiority at Boeing and sort of a refusal to accept accountability for this crisis.
You remind me, you're from Kansas?
I am from Kansas.
You got to understand, folks, for those of you worldwide and, even on the east and the left coast, people in Kansas are mental about aviation. The heritage goes back. You think the Wright brothers in North Carolina and all that. No, it's Kansas is ground zero of testing. Is that because it's flat? Is there a mountain?
Maybe. It might be. You know what? There is a hill in Lawrence. Where I'm from. The Campanile Hill. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been to Lawrence. Good morning, Lawrence, Kansas. Sirius XM 119.
So, Brooke, how about the new CEO? Do you think he can be an agent for change in that culture you're talking about here?
So the CEO has spent nearly 3 decades at General Electric under Jack Welch. And then he was in the running to become Boeing CEO. He lost that job to Jim McNerney, who was also an ex-GE guy. The current CEO of Boeing, or to-be CEO in a few days, Dave Calhoun, was on the board since 2009. So he was responsible for blessing a lot of the decisions that got Boeing into this mess. And coming from the culture that was GE, having been at Boeing for so long, I am a little skeptical that he is necessarily the change agent that Boeing needs. And I do wonder if you might see sort of a John Flannery 2.0 type of situation. John Flannery was the successor to Jeff Immelt, who succeeded Jack Welch, and he was there for 14 months. He basically had to take out the garbage and air all of GE's dirty laundry, and then you needed somebody else to come in, and Larry Culp to really change that company. And I think you could see a similar situation play out at Boeing.
What is the dynamic right now of the great arch split of Boeing between defense and commercial? What is that dynamic right now?
So defense has been strong for them, and I think it will continue to be strong. I mean, certainly there's been a lot of negative headlines on their tanker plane, that they have had some issues with sort of stray parts being left there, and the Department of Defense has not been super pleased about that, but they do seem to be stronger in defense than they are in commercial.
Tragically, 30 seconds left. We should have you back on this. What can you do, Brooke Sutherland, to be sure the 747 is never mothballed? Can we just have it fly forever?
Yes.
I can look into
Can you work into this?
And bring back the
what do you like about it?
It's great.
Yes.
It's the only airplane that matters. It's part of the fabric of our generation. I'm advantaged, folks, and then I can sit rock star up on the upper deck, with the pilots and all that. But it's the only real plane out there. All the rest of them are tinker toys.
Well, they are.
Am I right? Sweetie's on his head.
Love it. Love to see that thing pull up to the gate.
They are trying to pivot more towards narrow bodies from
I'll give you a pivot.
So maybe,
the 747. Brooke Sutherland, expert on Boeing. Thank you so much. Dow up 132. The VIX 13.06. We are produced by Richard Truman, in charge of our royal coverage. This is Bloomberg.
Hey, y'all. Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating...
Cutting for the net. Scores! On the goal line. Marshawn scores!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
And tucks it home!
And with this team, it's really fun to be a part of a team like that.
You can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium. From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today.
Hear every play of the NFL playoffs live with the NFL on TuneIn Premium. The divisional round kicks off Saturday at 4:35 p.m. Eastern when the Vikings travel cross country to take on the 49ers in an NFC showdown in Santa Clara. The action continues at 8:15 as the Ravens host the Tennessee Titans in Baltimore. On Sunday, listen live beginning at 3:05 Eastern as the Texans and Chiefs square off in Kansas City, followed by the Seahawks and Packers at 6:40 in Green Bay. The excitement of the NFL playoffs is on TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
Next time you look up at the stars, think about this. Inside you are the remains of a stellar explosion. You are made of stardust. And without the stars, there wouldn't be us. I'm Guy Raj, the wonders of the universe and the people who still look up every night. Next time on the TED Radio Hour from NPR. You can subscribe to the TED Radio Hour on TuneIn.
We can't make traffic move faster during rush hour, but we can help you catch up on the news with TuneIn. With live around-the-clock news from MSNBC.
In the UK, they're significantly worse. When the president gets up to the podium...
CNBC and Fox News Talk.
The Fox News poll sizing up the race for 2020 found that each of the 5 top Democrats...
You can use your stop and go for good by staying in touch with the world. Search news to hear what's happening now.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
The NBA is on TuneIn Premium.
Pointer by Anthony Davis. That's good!
Each week, TuneIn picks an NBA game you just can't miss. 2 of the top teams in the Western Conference go head-to-head. This Sunday, the Clippers are at the Nuggets. Tip-off is at 8 p.m. Eastern.
3 ball on the way. He got it to go! 3 from the angle. Got it!
Search NBA to follow your favorite NBA team today.
Want to know a quick, easy way to see if your favorite podcasts have a new episode available? Just go to the home screen on your TuneIn app and see the latest editions under the Your New Episode section. Happy listening.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards at the goal line. It's intercepted.
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown to Kansas.
Search NFL today.
Financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney.
Are we on the brink of a more serious downturn?
I've always thought of the municipal bond market as a little bit of a safe haven.
Banks are going to have to start paying their depositors more.
Are we still in that mode where we're buying the dips?
Breaking market news and insight from Bloomberg experts.
Cash, if you're looking at treasury bills, provides a higher return than stocks and bonds here in the U.S.
If your consumer is a woman, you're more likely to be a growth company.
Longer-term interest rates can go down, even with short-term interest rates still going up a little bit.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Well, it very much is risk on today in markets. Coming up, we'll talk about the rally that seems to be extending with the Nasdaq up 0.8%. People sighing relief, I guess, after a bit of a dip in response to Middle East tensions. We're going to be speaking also about how CFOs are feeling heading into 2020. But right now, let's get a check of those markets with Karen Moscow. Karen.
All right, Lisa, thank you. And yes, we are looking at records here for the S&P 500, Dow, and NASDAQ. Stocks rising and treasuries falling as investor appetite for risk returns after the U.S. and Iran step back from the brink of war. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. The S&P 500 up about 0.5%, up 14 points at 3267. Dow Jones Industrial average up 0.4%, or 123 points at 28,867. And the NASDAQ up almost 0.8%, or 68 points to 9197. 10-year Treasury down 4/32 bonds yield 1.88%. The yield on the 2-year, 1.59%. NYMEX crude oil down 1.3% on 77 cents at 58.84 a barrel. COMEX gold down 0.5% or $7.70 at 15.5250 an ounce. The euro 1.1108 against the dollar. The yen 109.47. Confidence among Americans surging to the best level since October 2000 on brighter views of the economy and finances, adding to signs that consumers will continue to underpin a record-long expansion. Bloomberg's index of consumer comfort rose 1.2 points in the week that ended January 5th. Filings for U.S. unemployment benefits fell to a 5-week low, the latest indication that the labor market remains solid just ahead of the monthly payrolls report that's due out tomorrow. And Federal Reserve Vice Chairman Richard Clarida said U.S. monetary policy is in a good place amid solid growth, stable prices, and a strong labor market. Clarida speaking this morning to the Council on Foreign Relations. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Lisa and Paul.
Karen, thank you so much for that. We appreciate it. Market Drivers today is brought to you by New Jersey Institute of Technology, a top 100 national university in the latest U.S. News and World Report college rankings. Learn more at news.njit.edu. We are making new all-time highs in the S&P, the Dow, NASDAQ. What a round trip we've had just in the past few days. Let's get the latest on market action with Bloomberg Stocks editor Dave Wilson. Dave, what are you looking at here?
Well, it really does look like, so the markets that we've seen for some time, in the sense that you've got technology companies leading the way here. Advanced micro devices, sort of an obvious example there. Now, they happen to get an upgrade at Mitsuho. I mean, they're talking about the server business looking like a positive for AMD. So at least in that case, you can explain it. But it really does kind of look like more of the same, in the sense that, the complexion, you might say, of the gains is no different. One thing that is different, though, it's the first time in a couple of weeks that we've seen stocks go in the same direction for more than one day. They were up yesterday and they're up again today. I mean, we've been in this pattern of up one day, down the next, and that's sort of breaking away. So it's kind of noteworthy. Yeah, that's true. I mean, a lot can happen between here and the closing bell, but at the same time, at least it shows you there's just this underlying strength to the market, which is coming through yet again and potentially pushing stocks to records here.
Yeah, strength in the broad equity indices. Kohl's, however, shares down by more than 8% after reporting weaker than expected holiday sales. We also got some weaker than expected numbers out of a couple other retailers, although L Brands, I believe, disappointed, yet their shares are actually up more than 4%. So I'm trying to understand that. Yeah. But it is sort of interesting to see an ongoing weakness in select retailers.
Well, I mean, the challenges of trying to compete in a world where Amazon sort of has become dominant, especially with their online business. I mean, it's just hard to do. And we've seen issues with these companies for some time. And it's more the same to that extent. You've got Kohl's down, you got JCPenney down more than 6%, a mere shadow of its former self, you might say, nonetheless. Their sales down more than 5% over the holidays, and that excludes a couple of areas they're getting out of, major appliances and in-store furniture. And then there is Bed Bath & Beyond, which is kind of in a class of its own at this point, down 17% after reporting fiscal third quarter results. They had an unexpected loss. Sales fell more than analysts expected. I mean, there are issues.
There are issues, but okay, Bed Bath & Beyond in a class of its own, it's true. They also are doing the classic CEO playbook of a new chief executive coming in and making it seem as bad as it possibly can so that it can, be reset.
Kitchen sink theory. Yep.
Yeah, kitchen sink, reset expectations, and then outperform, right?
Well, time will tell, I suppose, as far as that goes. I mean, that's the challenge that all these companies face. People don't go to the mall. They don't necessarily go shopping in stores, period, the way they used to. And so what draws them in, with Bed Bath & Beyond, historically, was the 20% off coupons, which you can now use not only in-store but also online. So, it's a challenge for a company like this to be able to sustain its relationship with shoppers at a time when the competition is definitely more of an issue, especially when it's right there on your computer.
I think what's fascinating when you think about the retail business is we've had some retail analysts come in here and say, the U.S. shopping or U.S. retail footprint is still overstored, and it could be by as much as 40 or 50%. And then which is an extraordinary number when you think about that. But then Macy's a couple of days ago, their stock actually had a little bit of a lift a couple of days ago when their CEO said, we're going to close 29 stores. So, I mean, that seems to be the only way to kind of support your business model is to shrink.
Well, that's true. And their sales didn't go down quite so much during the holidays as they had in the fiscal third quarter. So I suppose that's a plus. Less bad is good in that sense. I will point out, though, you've got Macy's down more than 2% today. That's after 3 straight days of gains, though. So at least it's a bit of a reversal and no doubt driven by what happened at Kohl's.
I will just say that 90% of the American Dream Mall, which is across the street from you.
I saw that.
90% of the store space is accounted for already.
I am shocked at that. And Joe Misek comes in there and tells us about how the bonds are trading well.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I just couldn't imagine being an investor or a creditor to that thing.
Okay,
but the numbers look decent.
Okay, so for anyone who's not keeping track, it took 17 years to build this thing. It has a ski slope and an ice skating rink inside. I don't know if you could call it a mall. I'm just saying.
Well, that's the idea. It's a real test for this concept that if you're going to draw shoppers, you have to offer them something other than stores. And so much of that American Dream Mall in my home state of New Jersey is entertainment. So, I mean...
Have you been yet?
I have not. I'm waiting for the stores to really kind of fill in.
So the ski slope isn't enough for you?
I've never been skiing in my life.
Really?
Never. Well, what a place to start in the swamps of Jersey.
Yeah, really.
In a mall, no less.
Exactly.
I also think it's interesting to look at what you saw in 10-year Treasury yields, or just Treasury yields in general, after we got the better-than-expected employment figures, and also we got consumer confidence ticking up. Again, the data seems to be supportive of this strong consumer and a strong U.S. economy, with the jobs market getting ever tighter. Which is an interesting lead-in, especially to tomorrow, because we've got the jobs report coming out.
Yeah.
And now is sort of, show me the money kind of time after the tensions dissipated. We're looking right now, 10-year yields, 1.89%. Not that high, actually, considering.
Dave, when do earnings really start?
Tuesday.
Okay.
I mean, that's when you get
Morgan.
3 of, exactly. Okay. And not just JP Morgan either. Citigroup and Wells Fargo, if memory serves. So 3 of the top 4 financial companies will be
so
out.
that'll kick off the fourth quarter earnings season. Maybe give this market a little bit of a sense of direction, other than what we've been seeing, which has been up. But a lot of strategists are saying, if this rally is going to continue in 2020, we're going to need to see some earnings growth, unlike 2019, where it was mostly multiple expansion.
I love that you're saying maybe it'll give this market some direction. It has a direction.
Yes, it has a direction.
Just steadily up, grinding higher.
Stutter steps.
Yep.
Stutter steps for sure. But the fact that everybody shrugged off any potential tension. I mean, really, it was a shrug off.
It was a shrug off.
Tells you a lot.
Yeah, we had a few days of weakness given the geopolitical risk coming out of the Mideast, but one tweet or it all takes to get this market turned around, and we are marching higher yet again. Bloomberg Stock Center, Dave Wilson, thanks so much. Right now, let's head down to our 99.1 studios in Washington, D.C. for Nathan Hager for World and National Headlines. Nathan.
Where, Paul, we are awaiting a vote later today from the House on a resolution that would limit President Trump's options when it comes to military action against Iran. The latest now from Bloomberg's Martin DeCaro.
House Democrats now ready to vote to require the president get congressional approval for any future military action against Iran. Senate Republicans are unlikely to agree, with a couple exceptions, such as Utah Senator Mike Lee.
I walked into the briefing undecided. I walked out decided.
He says he'll support a resolution by Virginia Senator Tim Kaine, similar to the one in the House, both invoking the War Powers Act of 1973, which was designed to prevent a repeat of the Vietnam quagmire. In Washington, Martin DeCaro, Bloomberg Radio.
Meantime, Vice President Mike Pence is defending President Trump's decision to take out Iranian General Qasem Soleimani, telling NBC's Today Show when it comes to Iran's retaliatory missile barrage.
The ballistic missiles fired at American bases, Al-Assad and Erbil, we believe were intended to kill Americans.
The head of Iran's aerospace force says the strikes targeted U.S. military equipment, not forces, but were the beginning of a larger operation that could kill 500 Americans in its first phase. More Democrats are urging House Speaker Nancy Pelosi to lift her hold on articles of impeachment against President Trump. House Armed Services Chairman Adam Smith tells CNN he understands why Pelosi's trying to gain leverage ahead of a trial, but at this point he says it doesn't look like that's going to happen. Smith says ultimately Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell will be responsible for the fairness of a Senate trial. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg.
In the real world, there are no rabbits in hats, crystal balls, or cards that turn into money. Instead, you get business information from top-tier analysts and experts.
What should expectations be for this latest round of negotiations?
That's actually better, isn't it?
They're both trying to say they have the upper hand.
Bloomberg Markets with Paul Sweeney and Lisa Abramowitz. Weekday mornings at 10 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Welcome back to the Dog Show. Up next, we have Satchmo. Satchmo is a member of the Shelter Pet Group.
That's right, a group known especially for their couch-snuggling, ball-chasing, face-licking, and, of course, companionship. Now, let's see him in action.
Look how he makes eye contact with his person.
That's actually known as the treat stare.
How intuitive. And now he appears to be excitedly turning in circles.
Ah, the happy dance so common with this group.
But really, the best way to know an amazing shelter pet like Satchmo is to meet one.
Visit theshelterpetproject.org today. Adopt.
Brought to you by Maddie's Fund, the Humane Society of the United States, and the Ad Council.
The Bloomberg Business of Sports podcast.
How did the Yankees become this mega valuable team?
Where the money is flowing inside sports around the globe.
From the marketing perspective, where are the dollars spent?
From union heads to team owners, Scott Soshnick and Michael Barr speak to the names that power this multi-billion-dollar industry.
Boston Red Sox CEO Sam Kennedy.
National Hockey League Commissioner Gary Bettman.
Bloomberg Business of Sports. Listen today on Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, or subscribe on Apple Podcasts.
If you love them enough to listen to them practice the same song on tuba,
please be done.
Over and over and over and over and over, then surely you'll check NHTSA.gov/the right seat to make sure they're correctly buckled in the back seat.
Sounds good, honey.
Check today at NHTSA.gov/the right seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
I used to be a bit of a rubbish sleeper. I'd toss and turn all night, and somehow I could never find the comfy bit of the mattress. It was a proper nightmare. That's what brought me here, testing mattresses in the Which Test Lab. We use a custom-made barrel rolling machine to simulate a decade's worth of use. And the mattresses that perform best are the only ones we recommend for your bedroom.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
You don't just live in one room, so why should your Wi-Fi? With Sky Broadband's Wi-Fi guarantee, you'll get Wi-Fi in every room or money back. Perfect for food shopping in the bedroom, gaming in your PJs in the lounge, or streaming sci-fi movies in the kitchen. Get Sky's super-fast broadband and Wi-Fi guarantee. £32 a month for 18 months with $19.95 setup. Click on the banner now.
Sky Fibre errors, Sky Kit required. Refund on boost component of subscription paid during current minimum term up to date of claim. Minimum 3 megabits per second or money back. Prices may change during minimum term. See sky.com/guarantee.
At Ring, we've reinvented the doorbell. So no matter where you are or what time of day, you can watch over your home and the things you care about. Ring Video Doorbell streams HD video and two-way talk straight to your phone, so you can speak to whoever's at your door from anywhere.
Delivery.
Oh, great. Could you leave it with my neighbour, please?
Sure, no problem.
And it's so simple, you can install it yourself in minutes. See, hear and speak to whoever's at your door from wherever you are with Ring Video Doorbell. Available at ring.com and selected retailers.
The NBA is on TuneIn Premium.
Pointer by Anthony Davis. It's good!
Each week, TuneIn picks an NBA game you just can't miss. Two of the top teams in the Western Conference go head-to-head. This Sunday, the Clippers are at the Nuggets. Tip-off is at 8 p.m. Eastern.
Three ball on the way. He got it to go! Three from the angle. Got it!
Search NBA to follow your favorite NBA team today.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
A lot of people aren't aware that TuneIn lets you listen to the same terrestrial stations that you pick up on your FM AM dial, except you can hear them from anywhere. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
Puts his head down, crashes, and
the snap is good. The hold is good. The kick is on its way. It is good! Did you know all weekend long the NFL playoffs are on TuneIn?
In for the touchdown!
Search NFL to never miss a moment of the action. You might already know that TuneIn allows you to listen to all the pro sports leagues wherever you go. But did you know TuneIn is also home to the wide world of college sports?
Open three, DeAndre Hunter got it! Handoff Carruthers, big hole right side. He leaps and he surges in, touchdown!
From live college football, basketball, and baseball games to podcasts and coaches shows fueling your love for the game in your school. And the best part is, it's all free. Search college sports to find your team or league.
Headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Stocks are up, treasuries are down as investor appetite for risk is back after the USA and Iran stepped back from the brink of war. We look at those numbers every 15 minutes throughout the trading day here on Bloomberg Radio. S&P's up 0.5%, up 16. Dow's also up 0.5%, up 138. And the Nasdaq's up 0.8%, up 71. The 10-year is down 3/32. The yield is 1.88%. West Texas Intermediate crude is down 1.4%, 58.75 a barrel, while COMEX gold's down 0.6% at 15.5110 per ounce. The dollar yen is at 109.55. The euro at $1.1106. A British pound is $1.30.47. Betting on beer pong. You know, beer and college goes together, but doubling New York's beer tax to benefit higher education is up for debate. A bill that would boost the levy to help State University of New York system and its New York City counterpart gain ground this week as a Manhattan Assembly member who's proposed the increase on December 30th was joined by a Senate sponsor, doubling the tax on beer for higher education. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
You're listening to Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Well, we speak to a lot of economists here on this program, and I think the consensus is that as it relates to U.S. GDP growth in 2020, maybe 2%-ish, which is still growing, obviously, but slower than what we've become accustomed to. But it's often good to talk to the folks in the corporate C-suite to get a sense of what their economic outlook is, and our next guest does just that. Sandy Cockrell, Global CFO Program Leader at Deloitte, based in New York City. Sandy, thanks so much for joining us. I know you guys just came out with your fourth quarter CFO survey. What are some of the key takeaways?
So, Paul, thanks very much. Yeah, our fourth quarter survey really kind of centered on three themes that came across. Number one, CFOs are cautious. Number two, we saw a fair amount of pessimism. And number three, really some defensive posturing that's starting to happen. 97% of the CFOs expect a downturn to hit us sometime by the end of 2020. But the silver lining there is only 3% expect a technical recession. So that's actually improved from when we asked this question back in the first quarter. It's also buttressed by the fact when we looked at the growth metrics that are forecasted over the next 12 months around revenue, earnings, capital spending, and hiring, all those projections were down as well and sit really at near low levels of our history of our survey.
I'm wondering whether if you were to do this survey now, it would be different. Do you think so, given the fact that we've got some sort of trade truce between the U.S. and China? They might be feeling a little more positive?
Possibly. In discussions I have with clients and in the marketplace, again, you really hit the nail on the head. The real key is around trade policy. And I think if we could get to a point where we had a deal, especially with the U.S.-China trade policy, you'd really see a tailwind here pick up pretty quickly.
So, Sandy, just to be clear, 97% think there's going to be a recession in 2020 or just a slowing?
A slowdown, a downturn. So, and when we asked this question back in the first quarter, at that point, 84% expected a downturn by the end of 2020. But 15% were expecting an actual technical recession. That number is now only 3%. So certainly an improvement in what people were thinking 9 months ago.
Did they say anything about the rising costs of commodities for workers as wages rise, how much that's sort of affecting their outlook, paired with the opportunities for them to actually increase profits?
Yeah, so in terms of external concerns, trade policy is number one, but rising labor and input prices certainly is something that they've got an eye on. The labor market is just so tight, and not only is it tight, what we're seeing is the revitalization, the change in workforce for highly skilled labor, and that's really on the minds of CFOs. Is you really have to pay for that talent.
So, Sandy, one of the things, just thinking about CFOs and the C-suite in general, it's not just the bottom line and delivering results to shareholders. It's also seemingly greater demands upon being a good corporate citizen, whether it's the environment. What are CFOs saying about some of the pressures or some of the responsibilities and demands that are being placed upon them that maybe they didn't have a generation ago?
Right. So this quarter we asked some special questions around climate change. And we actually worked together with our European colleagues in the surveys that they execute. Very similar findings, but over 70% of the CFOs have noted at least moderate pressure coming from employees, investors, customers, and boards in terms of dealing with climate change as a CFO, and what can the CFO do to help. Over 90% of those CFOs have said they've taken at least one action. And that typically has been to really review energy footprints. How do they use energy efficiently throughout their operations? And then looking to build those kind of governance processes in place to make sure that there's accountability around it.
Going forward, I'm wondering how consistent the view out of CFOs really was. I mean, in other words, was the disparity between CFOs in different industries bigger than it has been in the past, or was there more convergence?
One thing that we noted was in terms of this coming year, over 2/3 of the CFOs expect M&A consolidation in certain industries, and technology and manufacturing led that. So that should make the bankers happy.
So, Sandy, I know your survey is global. What are you hearing from some other parts of the world as CFOs think about, some of these global CFOs think about their global business?
Yes, so this survey was primarily of North American CFOs, but we did ask their views of the European and Chinese economies. Their view of the European economy is pretty dismal. Only 7% felt like the European economy was good at this point, and only 5% expected to improve in a year. With respect to China, 18% view it as good, but only 11% expect an improvement in a year. And that's pretty interesting, because when we ask about where investment focus is going to increase, North America really is kind of the diamond in the rough. It still has a 70% approval rating in terms of being good at this point. But one thing that was quite interesting, these companies, 37% of them said that they were beginning to look at increased investment focus in Asia, but outside of China.
Interesting. Sandy Cockrell, thank you so much for being with us. Sandy Cockrell is Global CFO Program Leader at Deloitte in New York, talking about their latest Q4 CFO Signals report on what all of those C-suite executives are thinking in a year ahead. Really interesting how bearish they sound.
Yeah, it's interesting. Even as you think about Europe, for example, we've seen the economic data coming out there suggesting that perhaps it's stabilizing there and maybe about to turn. But I guess the folks in the C-suite that are responsible for putting capital to work, maybe they don't see it quite so much.
Yeah, and when we talked about how much more some of these companies had to pay in wages, Taco Bell is evidently offering $100,000 salaries for restaurant managers. That really caught my eye.
Yes.
And just how much the fast food industry in the U.S. is changing in the face of low unemployment rates. From New York, this is Bloomberg Markets.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Stocks higher, the prospect of war between the U.S. and Iran fading after President Trump backed away from threats to launch further attacks, instead calling for a deal with Tehran. Bed Bath & Beyond plunging after the retailer withdrew its financial guidance. Management said the chain's recent performance underscores the need for change. A turnaround plan will be unveiled in the spring. Apple said customers spent a record amount in its App Store during the final days of the holiday season. Spending hit $1.4 billion between Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve. That's up 16% from a year earlier. And Prince Harry and his wife Meghan Markle may become stars on the public speaking circuit. The two have announced that they are stepping back from their roles as senior members of the British royal family. They said they'll work to become financially independent. One agent said Harry should be able to command as much as former President Obama, about $500,000 per appearance. Courtney Donahoe, Bloomberg Radio.
I'm a 40-year-old man that walked in there to get his high school diploma. It was very hard for me, but Miss Araceli, she gave me direction.
At age 47, Marco finished his high school diploma.
50% of getting your high school diploma is walking through those doors. The other 50% is doing the work.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
What if you could keep the top economic experts in a conference room next to your office without having to feed them?
Do we need better optics? Do we need some substance?
Do CEOs care about ESG?
We have seen quite a lot of stimulus pumped into the system already.
It's the biggest warning yet about the financial risks of climate change.
Now there are more ways to hear us. Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and at BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
This is not a cat. This is not a rocket. And this is not a sale. That's right. At Smarty Mobile, we're not having a sale. While others are slashing prices, we're introducing our best ever new plans. Take our new 30 gig data SIM for just £10 a month. With unlimited calls and texts and no speed restrictions, credit checks or contract tying you down, why shop around? New plans, great value. Now that's Smarty. Grab yours today. Search Smarty Mobile. See smarty.co.uk for terms.
From dancing through the streets to the pulsing heartbeat in Brazil, to heading out on a safari in South Africa, or exploring the cultural delights of China. Wherever in the world you want to be, you can get there from your doorstep with KLM Royal Dutch Airlines. Book your dream deal at klm.com by January 21st and fly via Amsterdam from a choice of 16 UK airports. Make your dream a reality with KLM.
On a TUI tour, our English-speaking local guides will take you off the tourist trail. They won't just help you find the perfect souvenir, they'll show you how to make it. Choose from over 70 unforgettable tours worldwide. From tranquil temples in India to sunrise safaris in South Africa. On a TUI tour, we cross the T's, dot the I's, and put you in the middle. Book now and enjoy up to £200 off per booking. Booking T's and C's and minimum spend applies. Selected holidays only. At all protected.
At TradePoint, we get just how busy you are. That's why with a handy range of services to make your life easier. Whether it's cutting timber, matching bricks, or mixing paint, we help you make big jobs smaller. So for all you need, when you need it, get to TradePoint. Restrictions may apply. See tradepoint.co.uk.
This year, it's time to live well your way. Time to hit Boots. To reboot your get up and go. Reboot your fresh start. Reboot your vegan choices. And reboot your... Make 2020 your time for a reboot. Save up to half price on wellbeing products in-store on Boots.com or via the app. Boots. Let's feel good. Subject to availability. Exclusions apply. See in-store or online for details. Offer ends 28th of January.
You don't just live in one room, so why should you Wi-Fi? With Sky Broadband's Wi-Fi guarantee, you'll get Wi-Fi in every room or money back. Perfect for food shopping in the bedroom, gaming in your PJs in the lounge, or streaming sci-fi movies in the kitchen. Get Sky's super-fast broadband and Wi-Fi guarantee. £32 a month for 18 months with $19.95 setup. Click on the banner now.
Sky Fibre errors, Sky Kit required. Refund on boost component of subscription paid during current minimum term up to date of claim. Minimum 3 megabits per second or money back. Prices may change during minimum term. See sky.com/guarantee.
You might already know that TuneIn allows you to listen to all the pro sports leagues wherever you go. But did you know TuneIn is also home to the wide world of college sports?
Open three, DeAndre Hunter got it! Hand off Carruthers, big hole right side. He leaps and he surges in, touchdown!
From live college football, basketball, and baseball games to podcasts and coaches shows fueling your love for the game in your school. And the best part is, it's all free. Search college sports to find your team or league.
Right now, instead of hearing this, you could be listening to the music that keeps you moving with TuneIn Premium. Find today's biggest songs and all of your favorites commercial-free. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Markets.
Coming up, we're going to speak with our good friend Joe Nocera, Bloomberg opinion columnist, get his thoughts on his latest column entitled Carlos Ghosn Strikes Back, and Nissan Should Beware. That should be fun. Plus, we'll also speak to Jack Devine, former chief of CIA's worldwide operations, on the Iran situation. But first, let's go to Greg Jarrett of Bloomberg News for a Bloomberg Business Flash. Greg.
Paul, it looks like the S&P is headed for another record as the conflict between the U.S. and Iran, which drove futures down as much as 1.7% yesterday, has not escalated. The tech is leading the advance. Oil is also continuing its decline from multi-month highs. Gold's down for a second day, and the Japanese yen has dropped to a two-week low versus the dollar. Jeremy Stretch at CIBC tells Bloomberg the easing of geopolitical tensions creates opportunities in some emerging market currencies.
Currencies such as Turkish lira, for example, I think will continue to make gains. So I think it is very much the case of if we are in an environment, and of course we have to be mindful of ongoing risks of renewed uncertainties. But in the current environment, I think it is going to be the case that those higher yielding emerging market currencies and those more risk oriented currencies will continue to trade positively.
We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day here on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500's up 0.5%, up 18. Dow's up 0.5%, up 155. And the NASDAQ is up 0.8%, up 76. The 10-year is down 430 seconds. The yield is 1.88%. West Texas Intermediate crude is down 1.5% at 58.69 a barrel, with COMEX gold down 0.7% at 15.48.90 an ounce. The dollar yen, 109.55. The euro, $1.1103, and the British pound, $1.30.45. Grim news continues to roll in from mall-based retailers, with several companies reporting declines in key sales metric over the holiday period, despite a broader rise in consumer spending. Kohl's, JCPenney, and L Brands all reported drops in same-store sales. That is a critical measure of retail success. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
Bloomberg Opinion, informed perspectives, and expert data-driven commentary on breaking news.
The hot take on Carlos Ghosn and his press conference yesterday: hell hath no fury like a CEO scorned. The penman of that particular line is Joe Nocera, who's a columnist for Bloomberg Opinion, and he joins us at this time as we normally do get some insight from our Bloomberg Opinion colleagues. Joe,